halfway with you. Not gonna lie, I would actually be okay with more deep dish. I wouldn't. I hate like
Testing.
Wait, you didn't get water?
There's a water fountain right outside.
No, I just out.
Deep dish is not bad. It's also not
I don't know what
You drink tap
like,
water
what's
at home,
it?
Russia?
What is it
I
exactly?
just make deep dish.
I cannot, but it's like, honestly,
Oh, it's like the okay, that makes sense.
Cultural touchstone. And if we're gonna travel to different cities, we should try cultural touchstone. Well, we're kind of cool at this aquarium, but then no, not 15 hours instead.
oh no.
Oh yeah, we
He's
talked
actually
about
still
that.
as great.
There we go. Touchdown it.
He is the red.
Thank you.
You know what they used to call him?
You don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
I thought it was just I've been working on the same color for the
No,
past
because I'm telling you, that would be cool though. You could like live forever.
I don't know if I want that.
Somebody should write a book about
One
this
time
exact
someone was like,
concept.
stop holding paper / crocheting. I don't remember what. And then I started clicking a pen instead, and they looked at me like I was insane. So if the quiet option doesn't work out, then you're gonna have to deal with the loud option.
It's just
I
like
think Twitter was just recount.
it's just an enemy. It's just enemy of the people.
Oh yeah, Miss.
Fountain of old.
The water's-
elevator doors.
How much did you pay Matt? Clothes is always appreciated.
He did this voluntarily. Like he was teaching her.
So now you're probably mentally for it.
Okay.
I only
Dinosaur.
Something like that. Okay. Something happened. I don't know.
It's the start of the great.
So I have targets. Would you like me to read round one or?
I can do it.
You're being recorded. Okay. So, hear me out. Show it to you.
So would I read the next round? Sure.
The Fahian video?
It's not real.
The Fahian video? Let's group watch.
They have a lot of good instructions.
Oh, it looks great already.
At all. When does it begin?
You got like the like
These are all
transitions
like
for
PowerPoint
transitions.
transitions that I have probably used.
Oh my god, these are like the 2000 like.
Alright.
Okay, I need to understand.
Who's gonna be like the third person though when they like have to have more? I'm like,
Just don't do this.
that's an awful. Oh no, it's gonna be never mind. It's multi-talented.
He and you're multi-talented.
You're gonna find your Hamlin here? No way.
No way. No way.
Oh,
He's gonna be a Tetris girl. Ben. Oh my god, they can't.
Okay, so I think we're about ready to get started.
I just want to check.
Yeah.
Do I type a 1 into the notification for converted parts? Is it like 100 or like?
I think so. I think it's like a checkbox on
I will try it.
You should just verify.
You've clicked on a checkbox that is not visible toggle anyway.
Yeah, you need to. Players need to. The toss-up needs to be entered.
That
first
makes
before
sense.
it,
Okay.
shows. Okay. All right, so we are on round 1 of the 2022 NSC. My name is Mike Bentley. I am the head editor for this tournament. You want to introduce yourself as well?
And hi, I'm S.A. Shinoy. I'm the Vice President of Technology for PACE.
Yeah, and welcome both teams. We have Great Valley and Hunter B.
Would you mind sending me the link to the stream just so I can?
Yeah,
send it to me.
we'll go up until the delay stops, I believe, is what's going to happen here. So, is everyone ready to get started?
I need my. I'll just send this to me quickly.
Okay.
We'll see.
Oh. Our doors are closed. No, I don't want to do it. I want to add it.
Oh, interesting.
Let me know when you're ready.
I think I should be good.
Okay, our team's ready? Alright. Toss-up number 1. A person in this profession is told, do not fear, do not turn pale by a serpent who claims to be the Lord of Punt. A character in this profession is offered marriage to a king's daughter after crafting a fabulous saddle. The scribe Amena wrote a story titled for this profession which exemplifies Middle Kingdom Egyptian literature. A porter who shares a name with a character in this profession is told by the latter of an adventure in which they travel to a valley of diamonds while grabbing the legs of a giant bird.
A sailor?
Yes, 10 points. Bonus. Carl Sagan coined the term Tholen to describe the goop produced by successors to this experiment. For 10 points each, in this experiment, which underpins the theory of pseudopanspermia, Jeffrey Beda expanded the list of products of this experiment and helped develop ESA and NASA apparatuses for finding them in space.
Panspermia means like
Answer.
Asteroids with life?
No, over here.
Okay, so, not asteroids, this experiment. Okay.
This is Miller Urey. Sagan collaborated with Sidney Coleman to create a Fermi-type equation estimating the chance of this process. Cosper provides recommendations on how to prevent this process that often involves destroying spacecraft.
Like how to prevent asteroid impact? Like preventing asteroid impacts?
No, over here.
Like preventing the debris draft.
This is preventing contamination. Though others were found on the Murchison meteorite, this simplest amino acid is the only one ever directly observed in space.
Glycine?
10 points. Toss up 2. This country's folk song Green Bushes inspired one of its composers to write The Banks of Green Willow. In 1943, this country's Halle Orchestra was revived by one of its native conductors, John Barbaroli. A composer from this country quoted Dives and Lazarus and 17 Come Sunday in a suite of its traditional folk songs. That composer also orchestrated a 16th century melody based on this country's hymn, Why Fumeth in Fight.
It's like England?
Yes, 10. Bonus for Great Valley. At the behest of Venus, this woman completes a series of arduous tasks, such as descending to the underworld to obtain some of Proserpine's beauty. For 10 points each, name this beautiful princess who aroused Venus's jealousy. After being roped into a scheme to punish this woman, Venus's son ends up falling in love with this woman instead.
Psyche?
Yes. In a story recorded by Apuleius, this bow-wielding, winged god of love fell in love with Psyche.
Eros?
Yes. The god Phanes from this alternate cosmography is often equated with Cupid. Stories from this esoteric myth tradition tells of Phanes' birth from a cosmic egg and Zagreus' dismemberment by the Titans.
Orphic?
Yes, 30. Toss up 3. In a textbook, Fabrizio Benedetti explored theorized mechanisms of this phenomenon, such as top-down modulation of sensory and motor systems. This phenomenon was popularized after observing differences between soldiers in World War II and civilians in Massachusetts by Henry Beecher. This phenomenon still occurs even when it's explicitly explained to people in open label schemes. A court...
Like the placebo effect?
Yeah, power. For bonus. To begin this process, the artist applies aresicchio, or an underlayer of plaster. For 10 points each, identify this artistic medium known for its longevity. Each day, an artist completed a section of the work called a giornata.
Like making a fresco, perhaps?
Yeah.
Making a fresco draft?
Yeah, Masaccio varied the size of his giornata for his frescoes of St. Peter in the Brancacci Chapel in this Italian city. Michelangelo's David was sculpted in the city.
Florence, right? Florence draft?
Two members of this family, Agostino and Ludovico, collaborated on the fresco cycle Histories of Jason and Medea, with another member of this family, Annibale, the artist of The Butcher Shop and of The Bean Eater.
Oh, the bean. Okay, yes, Tarashi draft.
Say it again?
Tarashi?
Karate.
Yes. 30 points. Toss up 4. In a draft of a poem that was published posthumously in 2010, news about this person is delivered by a voice like a selected weapon or a measured injection. This poet's first day of college is described in the poem Blue Flannel Suit. This poet...
Plot.
Power.
Nice.
For Plath, and bonus for Great Valley. Translation can cause issues with peace treaties for 10 points each. The English version of this 1840 treaty asserts that the Maori will give sovereignty to the British while still retaining their property, but those concepts had no direct Maori analogues.
Waitangi?
Yes. Different versions of UNSC 242 ending this conflict called for a withdrawal from the territories or just territories. 34 American sailors were killed in the Liberty incident during this war.
Oh, 6 days. 6 day war?
Yes. The Treaty of Wukul between Italy and this African country gave more autonomy to it in the version written in Amharic. This country was later ruled by Emperor Haile Selassie I.
Ethiopia.
30 points. Toss up 5. Ronald G. Knapp's book on wind and rain types of these structures in China includes the famous Shenyang example. In 1587, Antonio de Ponte won a competition to design one of these structures that requires 6,000 timber piles to be driven into the ground. A man who invented the...
Oh, like a pagoda?
No, sorry. A man who invented the sand casting process at Baptist Mills Brass Works factory innovatively used iron for one of these structures in Shropshire and was named Abraham Darby. Washington Roebling almost died of decompression sickness while working on one of these structures in New York. Colonial structures...
Bridge.
10 points for bridge. Bonus. Molecules with a disphenoidal geometry have this electron pair geometry. For 10 points each, name this geometry, the most common one where axial and equatorial ligands swap positions in Berry pseudorotation.
Trigonal bipyramidal.
Berry pseudorotation is a form of this process, which IR spectroscopy observes various modes of to identify molecules in their fingerprint region. Wagging and rocking are examples of normal modes of this process.
Vibrations?
Yes, trigonal bipyramidal molecules have 5 ligands attached to their central atom, and this number of lone pairs. This is also the number of double bonds in an alkane.
0.
30 points. Toss of 6. Porphyrin compounds exhibit an intense absorption peak in this color in the spectrum called a Sorey band. Cry1 and Cry2 code for proteins called cryptochromes, which use the light of this color for entrainment.
Red.
No. A twisted form of carotenoid astaxanthin causes about 1 in 2 million lobsters to appear this color. Animals that appear green or this color rarely do so to pigments and are more likely to exhibit structural colorization as seen in the wings of the butterfly Morphodidius. Human eyes which appear this color contain little melanin, which normally blocks Rayleigh scattering. S-cones perceive this color due to its shorter wavelength in the visible spectrum. For 10 points, name this color of jays in the genus Cyonicita.
Blue.
Blue is correct. Bonus for Hunter. A thought experiment about this substance is used to illustrate that meaning just ain't in the head. For 10 points each, what substance looks identical to XYZ in Hilary Putnam's twin Earth thought experiment? Aristotle grouped this classical element with earth, air, fire, and ether.
Air, fire, water.
Water.
Direct.
Putnam championed the internal form of this position. Putnam's no miracles argument supports the scientific position of this name, which holds that our best theories give us genuine knowledge of the world.
I don't know, this theory, best knowledge general.
Like something about empiricism?
Direct.
Agree?
Empiricism. That's what I was thinking about.
Utilitarian.
That's realism. Putnam's internal realism resembles the transcendental idealism of this German philosopher who argued that it's impossible to know anything about things in themselves.
Kant. I think it's Kant.
Kant direct.
20 points on the bonus. Toss up 7. At Rufaro Stadium in this modern day country, an ailing Bob Marley sang Get Up, Stand Up to celebrate its newly won independence. Malaysia's prime minister partially funded the construction of a presidential house in this country nicknamed Blue Roof.
South Sudan.
No. A North Korea trained military unit called the 5th Brigade carried out an ethnic cleansing in this country during a period known as Gukurahundi. Perhaps 20,000 people were...
Zimbabwe.
10 points for Zimbabwe. Bonus. This collection's political criticism partly led to its author spending 18 months under house arrest, during which he wrote the story Moo Moo. For 10 points each, name this collection, which ends with the story Forest and Steppe. It opens by discussing the contrasting peasants Kor and Kalinic.
No clue. Collection. Maybe this is like a Marquez.
Answer?
Letters from Penitentiary Draft.
No, over here.
Sportsman sketches.
That's right. The Sportsman Sketches is by this Russian author of the novel Fathers and Sons.
Any idea? Dostoevsky Draft.
No, over here.
Turgenev.
Yes. Some characters in the Sportsman sketches, as well as Bazarov from Fathers and Sons, exemplify an archetype named for this adjective. Turgenev's Diary of a Man, described by this adjective, codified that frequently nihilistic archetype, which is similar to the Byronic hero.
Superfluous, right?
Yes, direct.
Yeah, 10 and 20 on the bounce back. Toss of 8. This deity, or a magic user named Hild, orchestrates the battle of the followers of Hayden, whose combatants are killed and resurrected every day for 143 years. This deity interrogates a wolf-riding seeress named Hindla to reveal the ancestry of Otar. This deity's tears were variously said to consist of amber or gold.
Freya.
Power.
Nice.
Bonus. By the late 16th century, a fifth of all land in the city was occupied by its conventos grandes. For 10 points each, identify the city that had 13 nunneries during the reign of Viceroy Francisco de Toledo. Today, it is the capital of Peru.
Lima.
In the 16th century, most of the women in Lima's convents were born in Peru, but descendants of Spaniards, thus giving them this designation. These people typically had lower status than peninsulares.
Paisanos.
Over here?
Creole.
Yeah.
Direct.
What?
Creole.
Yeah. The Lima-based missionary Ruiz de Montoya established one of these Jesuit settlements in Paraguay, where he attempted to convert the Guarani to Christianity. These settlements grew following the Jesuit expulsion from Europe.
Mission?
Over here.
Okay.
These are missions.
Okay, missions, direct.
Both said that this is reductions or reducciones. So 10 and 10 on the bonus. Toss up 9. A Latin American film in this genre, Hour of the Furnaces, accompanied the manifesto towards a third cinema. Since Titicut Follies, Frederick Wiseman has specialized in making films in this genre. An animated film in this genre was inspired by Jonas Pohor Rasmussen's Afghan friend, Amin. A mirror device called an Interatron was invented for making films in this genre by the director of The Thin Blue Line, Errol Morris. An effect named for a director of these films pans and zooms across still photographs and was used in 2001's
Documentaries.
10 points. Bonus. A poem by this author opens, "Tell me it was for the hunger and nothing less." For 10 points each, name this author of a poem and a novel, both titled On Earth Were Briefly Gorgeous, the former of which appeared in Night Sky with Exit Wounds in 2016.
Wong.
Yes. In the novel On Earth Were Briefly Gorgeous, the narrator's mother, Rose, was fathered by an American soldier during this war, which is also the subject of Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried.
Vietnam.
The second section of Vong's poem, On Earth Were Briefly Gorgeous, describes the addressee dying in this manner between my arms. A Gabriel Garcia Marquez story concerns the handsomest man in the world who died in this manner.
Drowned.
30 points. Toss up 10. In 1941, the anti-fascist Julian Barandero went from a concentration camp to being a hero at this activity. A trip centering around this activity in Germany drives the plot of the sequel to Jerome K. Jerome's 3 Men in a Boat. The voice of this activity, Phil Liggett, often consults a speaker's guide that documents the history of chateaus. The Pope Manufacturing Company helped fuel an 1890s craze for this activity, which accelerated the adoption of bloomers. An improvement.
Riding a bicycle?
Yeah, 10 points. Bonus.
They actually taught the biking at PACE.
A king of this name was accused of having learned nothing and forgotten nothing. For 10 points each, give this regal name of the monarch restored to the French throne after the downfall of Napoleon I. Another king of this name was executed in 1793.
Louis? Direct.
Louis XVIII's government was divided between right-wing ultras and more moderate doctrinaires. Under Louis Philippe, the doctrinaires were led by this prime minister, whose ban on political meetings sparked the 1848 revolution in France.
Defer.
He's directed.
Yes, Louis XVIII's government cracked down on dissent after the assassination of the Duke of Berry at one of these buildings. One of these buildings in Paris is named for Charles Garnier.
Like opera houses.
Yeah. Opera House, direct.
30 points. And that's half.
At the half, we have a score of 240 for great value and 150 for Hunter B.
All right.
So right now we're putting the hand in for Mag.
Okay, so I want to make sure I know how to do that. That's the right arrow. So Maggie's coming out after
Yes.
this stuff's up. So it's the right bracket, right?
Could be.
No, that's incorrect. I'm not doing this right. What I do instead is this. I do right bracket to toss of 20. And I'm sorry, who just came in?
Who just came in?
Welcome.
Yeah.
And would you mind testing your buzzer, please? Welcome. And if you are a senior, where are you headed next year?
I am a sophomore.
Okay, then we don't need to worry about that.
I'm the only senior here.
Fantastic. I just like asking. Alright, that means I can enter your thing for toss up 11. Fantastic.
Everything good at half? Reading fine? Any? Okay. Everyone ready to go? Alright, toss 11. In the 2000s, many aluminum versions of these devices exploded in their namesake plague. High-strength versions of these devices, which make use of Helmholtz double layers, are called their super type. These devices are connected in parallel to the load in simple low-pass filters, as their reactance is inversely proportional to frequency. The time constant...
Like resistors.
No. The time constant equals resistance times the characteristic quantity of these devices, which equals relative permittivity times area over distance for a type of them, shown as two parallel lines in circuit diagrams. Some of these devices' electrolytic types have a dielectric placed between the two parallel plates. For 10 points, what charge-storing devices have a namesake quantity measured in farads?
Capacitors?
That's right. Bonus for your valley. The Wadi Salam in Iraq has been the site of millions of these events, during which the Jazana is said. For 10 points each, name these events that typically include a washing by family members, followed by dressing in a white kafan cloth. In Islam, these events may only be performed at sea on long maritime journeys.
Funeral?
Yes, in Islam, bodies are not subject to this practice. In Hinduism, the ashes resulting from this practice may be spread in the Ganges.
Cremation?
Some sects hold that specific mourning periods, such as 40 days, are this term, referring to new practices with no precedent in Sunnah. The Arabic word or standard translation is acceptable.
The feet?
No, over here.
Any idea?
This time this is bid'ah or innovation, 20 points. Toss of 12. While in a graveyard, this character finds a rundown hourglass representing his life in a play often performed on All Saints' Day. This title character was controversially depicted...
Jesus?
No. As an atheist in a play which was written to replace the also controversial Tartuffe by Moliere. This character, whom a Jose Zorrilla play gives the surname Tenorio, was introduced in a circa 1630 play by Tirso de Molina, partly titled for a stone guest. In this character's usual narrative, he is haunted by Don Gonzalo after becoming involved with Gonzalo's daughter, Anna. In some dramatic adaptations, a statue of the Commendatore drags this character to hell after dinner. For 10 points, name a Spanish character who relentlessly seduces women.
Not one.
Yes. Bonus for Hunter. In 1884, Mitrofan Belyayev set up an annual award of 500 rubles named for this composer, which was won by most of the five. For 10 points each, name is composer of the oldest Russian opera in the modern repertoire, in which Ivan Susanin dies in a noble sacrifice against the Polish army.
Oh God. Oh, I'm not gonna know this.
Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky.
Over here. This time is Glinka. This early winner of the Glinka Award described Gibadon's decision to marry the Princess Swan in his own Tsar-based opera, The Tale of Tsar Sultan. His other works include Capriccio Español.
Capriccio Español. Oh God. Yeah, rock. Not enough direct.
Over here.
Yeah.
Rimsky-Korsakov.
Yes. By far the most famous part of Rimsky-Korsakov's opera, The Tale of Tsar Sultan, is an interlude titled For the Flight of One of These Animals.
Wow.
Bumblebees.
So true.
Direct.
Yeah, 10 and 10. Toss of 13. The Gospel of Nicodemus names two people with this occupation as Gestas and Dismas.
Thieves.
Power.
Nice.
Bonus. These structures are especially stable when they correspond to magic numbers. For 10 points each, name these structures described by the liquid drop model. These atomic structures consist of protons and neutrons.
Nuclei.
Yes. Atomic nuclei corresponding to magic numbers have an unusually high value for this type of energy per nucleon. This so-called energy of formation is equal to the mass defect times the speed of light squared.
Binding energy.
The properties of the magic numbers are not predicted by the semi-empirical mass formula named for Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker and this other German physicist who infamously computed the value of the Lamb shift while on a train ride.
Dirac.
Over here.
I don't know, like moles. Sorry? Different.
No.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
Hans
mole.
Bethe. 20 points on the bonus. Toss of 14. This president gave his only campaign speech to placate a rival faction at the Fifth Avenue Hotel. This president received a personal request by one man appointed to a Paris consulship. To be appointed to, sorry.
Garfield.
Yeah, power.
Nice.
Good job.
Bonus. In the 1970s, tens of billions of dollars were wasted on a steel plant in this region that largely served to enrich the Ndrangheta families that controlled its economy. For 10 points each, then for this region of southern Italy, with capital at Catanzaro that comprises the toe of Italy's boot.
Calabria?
Yes. Calabria is separated by the Strait of Messina from this largest island in the Mediterranean, home to Mount Etna.
Sicily?
Unusually for Italy, Calabria has a sizable minority population who speak this language, whose standard form is derived from the Tosca dialect. This co-official language of North Macedonia is spoken by a people whose national hero is Skanderbeg.
Albanian?
30 points. Toss of 15. Marcus Hutter believes that performing this task is equivalent to creating effective AI and has sponsored a prize rewarding incremental improvements. The Burroughs-Wheeler and moved-to-front transforms can be used when pre-processing data for this task. This task can be approached by building prefix-free codes whose length is inverse to their frequency. Lempel and Zipf's algorithms or...
Data compression?
Yes. 10 points. Bonus. Following World War II, many executives of American firms went into government service. For 10 points each, one of the two executives, named Charlie Wilson, to serve in senior government roles in the 1940s, is widely misquoted as having told Congress that what's good for this company is good for the country.
Ford?
Over here.
General Motors.
GM.
Yes. Engine Charlie Wilson was replaced by Neil H. McElroy as president of Procter & Gamble in this cabinet position. This position took up the responsibilities of the Department of War and Navy.
Defense?
Yeah.
Yes. This group of 10 former Army Air Force officers who became executives at the Ford Motor Company included Robert McNamara, architect of U.S. policy in Vietnam.
With kids?
Yes. So 20 and 10 on the steel. Toss of 16. Mary Elise Saritti's recent history of this organization, Not 1 Inch, takes its title from a question asked by James Baker that was later interpreted to be a pledge. A 2014 meeting of this organization in Wales formalized a 2% target most members failed to hit. In a reversal of the Paasikivi Kikkonen
Is this just NATO?
power.
2%
Bonus. One of the 4 surviving manuscripts of poetry in this language ended up, for unknown reasons, in the Italian town of Vercelli. For 10 points each in this language, whose other poetic manuscripts include the Exeter Book. Beowulf was written in this language.
Old English draft.
Perhaps the best-known Old English poetic manuscript is this codex, which contains the only copy of Beowulf, as well as a translation of Judith. The edges of its pages were burned in the 1731 Ashburnham house fire, from which most of it was narrowly saved.
I don't know, like Akai would have.
The Lindisfarne Codex.
Direct.
Over here?
Noel Codex?
Yes. The oldest Old English poem, Caedmon's Hymn, survives only in copies of this medieval scholar's work, Ecclesiastical History of the English People.
No, it's not going to be Guido, but I'm going to say Guido. Correct.
Over here?
Bede?
That's right. So 10 and 20 on the steel.
No, that's you not your whole
I know.
English.
He's English.
Toss up 17. This artist's instructions for being an artist are: take an object, do something to it, do something else to it. This artist applied a great deal of sculpt metal to a store-bought tool for his sculpture Flashlight 1. This artist made a cast of Merce Cunningham's foot, and it made designs for Cunningham's dancers with his lover Robert Rauschenberg. A joke about this man's dealer, Leo Castelli, led him to create a sculpture of 2 Ballantine ale cans titled Painted Bronze. This artist's paintings of things the mind already knows include his encaustic paintings of targets, and a monochrome white painting where collage techniques were used to create the 48 stars and 13 stripes.
Johns?
That's right. 10 points. Bonus. This doctrine was extended in 1982's Harlow v. Fitzgerald. For 10 points each, name this doctrine, criticized by Judge Don Willett as offering protection as long as you were the first to behave badly. In 2020, Colorado's SB 217 made it harder for police accused of misconduct to use this doctrine as a defense.
Qualified immunity?
Sonia Sotomayor argued that qualified immunity gutted the deterrent effect of the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable examples of searches and these other actions.
Seizures.
Qualified immunity often requires clearly established precedent to convict cops. Common law judges are bound to precedent by this 2-word Latin phrase meaning to stand by decisions.
Stare decisis.
Yeah.
Stare decisis.
30 points. Toss-up 18. This city was the birthplace of the celebrated musician Pronomus. Nearly all currency minted in this city contained an image of a figure-of-8 infantry shield on it. The city defeated a numerically superior force at Tugaira. Prior to the Third Sacred War, the city controlled the Amphictyonic League. This city financed the rebuilding of a fortified city called Mycenaeus, mostly populated by another city's former helots. Troops from this city employed the cutting off the snake's head technique to defeat Cleombrotus of Sparta.
Thebes.
10 points.
I should have put.
Bonus for Great Valley. This composer wrote etudes with nicknames such as Black Key and Revolutionary. For 10 points each, named this romantic pianist and composer who incorporated melodies from his native Poland into his mazurkas and polonaises. Chopin's Etude Opus 25, number 10, requires the pianist to play long stretches of these perfect intervals that are often mistaken for unisons. Franz Liszt included a difficult pretissimo passage of them at the end of his Hungarian Rhapsody number 2.
Octaves?
Yes. Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody of this number in D-flat major climaxes with an exhausting passage of staccato octaves. Chopin's Etude Opus 25, number 8, requires a pianist's right hand to play rapid intervals spanning this many notes.
Six.
30 points. Cosmo 19. After returning to his hometown and seeing a play, this character is mocked by an apprentice named Trab. This character notes how the shape of the letters on my father's tombstone gave me an odd idea that he was a square, stout, dark man. This character feels racked with guilt after stealing a pork pie from a pantry during a Christmas dinner.
Pip.
Power.
Nice.
Bonus. This novel's first chapter culminates with a poet named Presley hearing the prolonged cries of agony of a herd of slaughtered sheep. For Dipwood each in his 1901 novel, in which ranchers are ruined by a firm headed by Shelgrim. This novel was the first in an unfinished trilogy that would have ended with The Wolf, A Story of Europe.
Is this a Frank Morris? The Octopus?
In Frank Morris's The Octopus, one of these vehicles, operated by the Pacific and Southwestern Trust, is described as being the symbol of a vast power, huge, terrible.
Trade.
Chicago finance, the subject of Norris's The Pit, is also explored in this author's novel, The Titan. This naturalist author also wrote an American Tragedy.
Dreiser.
30 points. Last toss-up. Waterproof examples of these substances have been inspired by a bivalve-produced example whose iron and vanadium ions denature proteins. In one of these substances, the nitrile group of a cyanoacrylate ester reacts with a basic surface in the presence of moisture and rapidly polymerizes. Polyvinyl acetate is a common but weak one of these substances, which in a common demonstration cross-links with borax to form slime. A strong...
Like glue?
Yes. Bonus. While several types of this virus do not cause symptoms, several strains, especially its 16 and 18 strains, can lead to cervical cancer. For 10 points each, name this common STI, which may present with namesake genital warts. The Gardasil vaccine protects against this virus.
Oh, HPV direct.
A major reason for HPV's malignancy is its E6 protein's actions in degrading this protein, the so-called guardian angel of the genome.
Any idea? Guardian P50 direct.
No, over here.
P53.
That's right. The HPV genome contains 6 of these open sections in its early region. These regions are the possible combinations of start and stop codons within a DNA sequence and allow a double-stranded sequence to code for up to 6 different translations.
Okay. Any idea? It's the one that starts.
The box things.
Oh, the box.
Answer?
The top boxes?
No, over here.
Introns?
These are reading frames, so 10 and 10 there, and that is the end of the game.
Our final score is 560 for Great Valley and 230 for Hunter B. Well played both teams.
Good game.
Oh, you need
Dr. Perry.
Like,
About error running. Perfect.
Toss of 6. Porphyrin compounds exhibit an intense absorption peak in this color in the spectrum of the spectrum called a Sorey band. Cry1 and Cry2 code for proteins called cryptochromes, which use the light of this color for entrainment.
Red.
No. A twisted form of carotenoid astaxanthin causes about 1 in 2 million lobsters to appear this color. Animals that appear green or this color rarely do so to pigments and are more likely to exhibit structural colorization, as seen in the wings of the butterfly Morphodidius. Human eyes which appear this color contain little melanin, which normally blocks Rayleigh scattering. Escones perceive this color due to its shorter wavelength in the visible spectrum. For 10 points, name this color of jays in the genus Cyonicita.
Blue.
Blue is correct. Bonus for Hunter. This family, Augustino and Ludovico, provides recommendations on how
Okay.
Good luck, guys.
I need to make sure I pull up the packet.
Good luck to you too. Suburban.
Oh, we have packet 2 passwords, correct? We just need to close this. Open multiple tabs.
Walking northwest. Walking
Why did Slack close?
You are northwest of St. Louis and we are northwest of Des Moines.
Packet passwords. Packet password.
San Diego.
Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, no.
Northwest of San Diego, that would be like
Relatively.
an aqueous school, I think.
Yeah, I saw. I'm just copying and pasting the link, so I have 2.
So no.
Don't wanna do
If you go west far enough, you would be there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not the password. Yeah, that's. Alright. Welcome both teams. So this is going to be round 2. On my left from Waukee, Iowa, we have Waukee Northwest. And on my right from, I'm sorry.
Parkway West.
Parkway West, Missouri.
Yes.
Okay, Parkway West. Alright, are both teams ready to begin?
Yes.
Okay. Best of luck to both teams. We'll begin with toss-up 1. A class of quantum techniques named for this adjective is exemplified by the annealing method allegedly used for optimization by the D-Wave 1 computer. That quantum computing technique uses a result named for this adjective, which states that a system remains in the same eigenstate of the Hamiltonian if it is changed slowly. A quantity name for this adjective is 1.4 for a diatomic gas and is denoted gamma, such that pressure times volume to the power gamma is constant in processes of this type. Reversible processes of this type are isentropic, such as the expansion phase of a Carnot cycle. In processes of this type, the change in internal energy equals the work done. For 10 points, name this type of process with no net heat transfer.
Isothermal?
No. It's times adiabatic. It's also 2. In a novel by this author, Lucy Potts worries about falling off a foot log and being bitten by the local cottonmouth moccasin, prompting John to crush it. After taking a job in the muck, the protagonist of another novel by this author gets into a fight with her husband over a woman named Nunki. In a novel by this author, Hattie conjures a spell on Lucy, causing her to fall ill and die, reflecting this author's ethnographic studies on hoodoo rituals. A novel by this author of Jonah's Gourdvine is framed as a conversation with Phoebe. Sorry?
Hurston?
That's 10 points. And bonus for Parkway West. Ludwig mies van der Rohe's, sorry, that's the wrong bonus. This element is present in most polymers used in durable water repellents for 10 points each. Name this element, many equivalents of which are bound to carbon in forever chemicals like Teflon.
Actually, can't skip, so.
Oh, we don't.
That's fine, but.
Answer?
Nitrogen.
Bounce? Times fluorine. A fluorinated derivative of this compound serves as the monomer that forms Teflon. This 2-carbon compound serves as a plant hormone that encourages ripening.
Oxidants, yeah. Oxidants.
Bounce?
Gibberellin.
This is ethylene. A mixture of hydrogen fluoride and antimony pentafluoride serves as one of the substances which definitionally have a Hammett function of less than -12. They can be used to stabilize carbocations. Answer. Bounce? These are superacids, no points for either team, but here's toss of 3. A line from this opera, Addio senza rancor, appears on the tombstone of Australian soprano Nellie Melba, who regularly sung parts from it at Covent Garden. In 1926, King Vidor directed the most notable of at least 8 silent film adaptations of this opera, many of which claim to be based on the recordings of on the original Henri Merger novel for copyright reasons. 1920s gramophone clubs often owned recordings of Che Gelida Menina from this opera. A waltz from this opera, made into the pop hit Don't You Know, is sung during a choral at the Café Momus. A musical based on this opera changed its setting to the East Village during the AIDS crisis. Rent was based on, for 10 points.
La Boheme.
10 points. And go to Parkway West. A plague name for this emperor likely originated in the Tian Shan range for 10 points each. Named this Byzantine emperor who survived a deadly pandemic in 542. Tribonian worked on the legal code for this great emperor.
Justinian.
Yes. A scholar from this city, Evagrius Scholasticus, wrote an account of the Justinian plague. This city was founded by a Diodocus and was later the capital of a crusader state once led by Bohemond of Toronto.
Antioch.
Yes. Another account of the Justinian plague comes from a history by Procopius, usually given this title adjective. Another history title for this adjective is the most complete Mongolian account of Genghis Khan.
Secret.
That's 30 points. Toss of 4. In a story about this character in the Iliad, this hero is given a folded tablet inscribed with murderous symbols, which he gives to his host after 9 days of feasting. This hero exchanged a valuable cup for a belt from King Oeneus, according to Diomedes, who hears this man's story from Glaucus. After this character becomes hateful to the gods, he is sent to wander on the plane of Al.
Clarify?
10 points. And your bonus. A common variety of these things is associated with accessing a null pointer for 10 points each. Name these things, which are thrown by a child process to signal that they have a problem. These things are handled by try-catch blocks and are generally less severe than errors.
Exceptions.
Yes. This language handles exceptions by altering return values, which are otherwise 0. This language's low-level interaction with memory produces seg faults that are absent in its ++ and sharp successors.
C.
Yes. This keyword designates that code should be run after a preceding try block is completed, regardless of whether an exception was thrown, and commonly wraps clean-up functions. Answer. Bounce. This is finally, that's 20. And toss 5. Euler's reflection formula is a simple way to find the value of the gamma function at this number. That value is the square root of pi. Weierstrass's variant of trig simplifies integrals using a variable equivalent to the tangent of this number times theta, which equals sine theta over the quantity 1 plus cosine theta. This number is the real part of all known non-trivial zeros of the Riemann zeta function. The perimeter times the apothem of a regular polygon is this fraction of the area. This fraction is the second term of harmonic series.
1 over n?
No. This fraction is the multiplicative inverse of the smallest prime for 10 points. Name is fraction.
1/2.
That's 10 points. And your bonus. At one point in the early 19th century, 5 separate theater companies in London were staging dramatic adaptations of this novel for 10 points each. Identify this novel. A 1952 film adaptation of this 1819 British novel has been read as a protest of McCarthyism due to its sympathetic treatment of the Jewish character Rebecca.
The Crucible.
Bounce. This is Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe was written by this author who pioneered the historical fiction genre with novels like Waverley.
Sir Walter Scott.
Yep. This author wrote a spoof sequel to Ivanhoe titled Rebecca and Rowena. This writer for Punch popularized the term snob in a book published the same year as his magnum opus, a novel whose anti-heroine resolves, I must be my own mama.
William Makepeace Thackeray.
That is 20 points. Or sorry, we have, wait, yes. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, 20 points. That's 6. This event was financed by young men with unlimited capital, Joel Rosenman and John Roberts, although plans to charge an entrance fee were quickly dropped. A summer-long event, often billed as the black version of this event, was organized by Tony Lawrence and was the subject of a 2021 documentary by Amir Thompson. Michael Wadley's documentary about this event popularized the idea that a lot of brown acid was used during it. A group called the Hog Farmers set up a free kitchen during this muddy event, which took place on Max Yasgur's farm. Most people...
Woodstock.
That's 10 points. And bonus for Hockey Northwest. A concerto for these instruments and orchestra consists of 3 movements called The Bog, Melancholy, and Swans Migrating for 10 points each. Name these instruments, recordings of which feature prominently in the 1972 piece Cantus Arcticus. Ottorino Respighi specified that a phonograph recording of these instruments be played in Pines of Rome.
Violin.
Bounce.
Wind.
These are birds. Cantus Arcticus was composed by Einojuhani Rutaverara, who is from this home country, a fellow composer, John Sibelius.
Sibelius is Hungary. Hungary?
Bounce?
Finland.
Yes. Sibelius, unlike Rautavaara, was also inspired by a birdsong while composing his tone poem, The Swan of Tuonela, in which the title swan is represented by this double reed woodwind instrument and larger relative of the oboe. Answer?
Clarinet.
Bounce?
Bassoon.
Bassoon.
No, it's the English horn, so that's nothing and 10 on the field. 7. This philosophical theory is attacked using the example of Jim, a captain named Pedro, and 20 prisoners in an essay by Bernard Williams. Because of this theory's problems accommodating supererogation, it is open to the demandingness objection. John Rawls criticized this theory on the grounds that it does not respect the separateness of persons. Henry Sedgwick was a proponent of this theory, which he referred to as universalistic hedonism in the methods of ethics.
Utilitarianism.
That's 10 points. Your bonus. This structure is described as not sane and holding darkness within for 10 points each. Named this structure investigated by paranormal researcher John Montag in a 1959 novel by the author of The Sundial. That's bounce.
Go ahead.
It's Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House is a novel by this American author who also wrote We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
Shirley Jackson.
Yes. Jackson struck readers with this short story in which a town identifies a citizen who sacrificed via the title event.
The Lottery.
That was 20 points. That's 8. In the 1920s, Jean Comé-Il decided to leave several of the sites of this empire in a ruined state for political purposes. It's not related to Srivijaya, but Georges Sédès used this empire's Stela 127 to argue that the number 0 was not a Western invention. A half-mile-long bas-relief decorates the third enclosure of a temple complex built by this empire that was visited by Zhou Daguan. In 1177, a king of this empire defeated the rival Chang kingdom and seized its capital. 3 centuries later, this empire fell to the Ayutthaya. That is,
Khmer Empire.
that's 10 points. And your bonus. Sometimes transporting works of art can be a deadly business for 10 points each. 2 engineers were killed when the base collapsed of a 3-ton sculpture by this artist that was being installed in Princeton. One of this artist's signature mobiles hangs in the East Building of the National Gallery of Art.
No answer.
That's,
Called
yes. A rigger was killed when a portion of this artist's sculpture number 3 fell. This man's controversial tilted arc was removed from Foley Federal Plaza in 1989.
No answer.
That's,
No answer.
this is Richard Serra. This man's umbrellas project was dismantled after one fatally broke loose. Unfortunately, a Japanese worker was electrocuted in the dismantling. This man collaborated on the gates in Central Park with Jean-Claude.
No answer.
That's,
No answer.
this is Cristo. That's 10 points on the steel. Toss 9. A play by this author ends with a stage direction where a couple embrace but do not know the secret of the poet's heart. In another play by this author, a woman's speculation about how her gin-loving aunt may have been killed is presented as the new small talk. That scene shocked contemporary audiences when this author's friend, actress Mrs. Patrick Campbell, said, "Not bloody likely." One of this author's title characters is forced to decide between her husband James Laurel and Eugene Marchbanks. This playwright of Candida wrote a play whose protagonist decides to marry Freddie Ainsford Hill after being taught diction by Henry. That's here. That's 10 points. In your bonus, for 10 points each, identify the following about the controversial career of J. Marion Sims. Sims unethically experimented on enslaved women in order to repair fistulas, eventually earning him the nickname as the father of this field of medicine. This field's name means the science of women.
Gynecology?
Yes. Sims supposedly treated this fashion icon who made Biarritz a hot destination for the wealthy. She married Napoleon III in 1853. Answer?
No answer.
This is Empress Eugenie. Sims formed the Anglo-American Ambulance Corps, which helped treat soldiers who had been wounded at this decisive 1870 battle in the Franco-Prussian War. Napoleon III was captured in this battle.
Sedan.
That's 20 points. Gossip Dan, after which we'll have a score check. In this city, Peter McLaughlin legally adopted 60-year-old Stephen Whitfield to pass on below-market housing on islands served by Billy Bishop Airport. A medicine... okay, we're good on buzzers. A medicine wheel appears on a 3D sign in the city's Nathan Phillips Square. Industrialist Henry Mill Pelot built the 98-room Casa Loma Castle in the city. The William Davies Corp Company is the origin of this city's nickname of Hogtown. This city is the most populous in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, a region which also contains a research university at Waterloo. This city's Bay Street is its country's equivalent to Wall Street. In this city, a stadium originally called the Sky Dome is home to the only MLB team in its country. For 10 points, in its most...
Toronto.
10 points.
Baseball.
And bonus for Parkway West. The Jeva figure found in a Yoruba city in Nigeria contains one of these items made from leopard's teeth for 10 points each. Identify these accessories that in another culture are often given as gifts and may be made from ohia lehua.
Necklaces?
Yes. The Lokelani flowers are used to make lei necklaces on one of the islands in the state.
Hawaii.
Yes. Ancient Egyptian necklaces might have beads made from this material, primarily obtained from the Serabit El Kalim mine in the Sinai Peninsula. A double-headed Aztec serpent made of wood, oyster shell, and this material was included in a History of the World in 100 Objects.
Triangle.
Gold.
Bounce.
Bone.
It's turquoise. That's 20 points. And a half.
Alright, so we have 80 for Walking Northwest and 160 for Parkway West.
Right. Is my reading okay? Would you like me to speed up, slow down, adjust anything?
Maybe slow down half a beat.
All right, sounds good. Any substitutions for either team? also try to make sure that I say team controlling bonus.
The bonus is wrangling them like you're a steer with a rod.
All right, could you please touch your buzzer?
I'm sorry, who just came in? Is it
Abdul Hanan. Welcome. Any substitutions for Parkway West? All right, Parkway. Could you please touch your buzzer? Welcome.
Oh, sorry.
And Brenda. All right.
Wait, real quick, I think I might have 90 for.
Sure. What's up?
For
We
I
can
might-
check the score.
All right.
All right. What do you have at 5? I'm sorry. What do you have at toss at 5? The
Oh,
full
me,
score.
at 2005, I have 80-30.
I also had 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 80-30, then they got 10 on a steal to go to 40. Then they got 10 and 20 to go to 70. Then they got 10 on a steal to go to 80. And that's all the points that I have for them.
Didn't they get 8?
What bonus cycle was that on?
Toss, but they got
They got
toss
the
up
toss
at
up,
80.
they zero.
Toss
or
up
yeah.
and zeroed the bonus.
Bonus
Correct.
8. That was.
That was,
It's
Yeah, I've
Okay.
got 160 to 90 as
Yeah.
well.
alright.
So it's on bonus 8.
Bonus 8, what I got was 10 on the steal.
Yeah, it was
I
Calder.
may
was-
have missed that.
It was Calder on a steal and no points.
I got 10 on the steal for Parkway West.
Yeah.
And then
Do
0
you have
for.
do you have that 10 for them for the toss up?
For the toss up, we should.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
So 160 to 80.
yes.
Okay.
okay.
Do both teams agree on the score?
So then what were their bonuses for 5, 6, and 7?
I have 2 for 5, second and third, and then 2 for 7, second and third.
And use 2 for 5, second, third, I agree, and 2 for 7, second, third. That's what I have as well.
Okay, so nothing on 6.
Correct.
Okay.
That is what I have. All right.
Thanks.
Great.
I mean, I don't agree with the score, but I agree that it's factual.
That is the way it goes sometimes. All right. Are both teams ready to continue with the second half? All right. Best of luck to both teams. We'll continue with toss-up 11. Chef Alexis Sawyer invented an improved camp stove to feed troops during this conflict. One hero of this conflict funded future work by selling engravings of the painting The Mission of Mercy. During this war, art dealer Agnew & Sons financed Roger Fenton's photojournalism, and a hotel selling healing herbs and tonics was established by Jamaica-born.
The Crimean War.
That's 20 points.
Christian.
And your bonus. For 10 points each, answer the following about singing as part of the Christian worship experience. This word that roughly means verily or let it be so typically ends Christian prayers and hymns.
Amen.
Yes. Ephesians 5:19 orders the church to speak to each other through these words and hymns and spiritual songs. The 23rd of these words, a popular source of Christian devotional prayers, originates the saying, "My cup runneth over."
No, it's
Bounce?
Psalms.
It's Psalms.
Wait.
Is that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, they said that.
Okay, I'm sorry. The direct answer was different, but I thought I heard something different, but that's right. Bethel Music, a popular Christian contemporary music collective with songs like "No Longer Slaves," is based out of this state. The Jesus movement, which some consider to have started the genre of Christian rock, also began in this state.
Mississippi, Mississippi.
Mississippi.
That's
Tennessee.
it's California, so that is 10 and 10. That's 12. The central priming protein that forms this molecule initially attaches up to 7 monomers to its tyrosine 194 because the enzyme which synthesizes this molecule cannot work without having at least 3 residues present. Ethanol precipitation of RNA typically incorporates this molecule to maximize recovery. UDP is conjugated to this molecule's monomers prior to incorporation via alpha-1,4 glycosidic bonds. This molecule's many 1,6 glycosidic bonds creates its many branches. Epinephrine stimulates the breakdown of this substance to provide fuel for glycolysis. This molecule's functions in animals analogously to starch in plants. For 10 points, identify this polymer that stores energy in the liver and muscles, which consist of thousands... No, for now. Which consists of thousands of glucose units. Time, it's glycogen. So, toss up 13. Description or proper name acceptable. In the hopes of being promoted, this character spends her evenings studying shorthand and French. This character and her mother struggle to remove another character's writing desk and chest of drawers containing a fret saw. This character's parents watch her spring to her feet and stretch her young body while on a tram ride to the countryside. This...
Edgar Sam's sister.
Yeah, 20 points. And bonus. For 10, okay. Many graduates from the, For 10 points each, identify the following about musicians who've gotten involved in politics. Bobby Elvis, a musician from this country, had his song "Letter to Ya Tsishi" banned due to its video imagining that the deceased father of its current president, Felix Tshisekedi, looking back scornfully at his son. Answer?
Japan.
Bounce?
Thailand.
It's Democratic Republic of Congo. Bobby Wine, the self-described ghetto president of Uganda, was arrested in 2019 for leading a protest against a tax on this company. The whistleblower Francis Haugen worked at this company.
Facebook.
Yes. Fuji's member Wycliffe Jean filed to run for president in this country in 2010, but was ruled ineligible. In 2021, this Caribbean country's president, Jovenel Moise, was assassinated.
Yeah. 80.
That's 20 points. Toss up 14. The PTP protocol designates leaders to distribute this kind of data and is often used underground. The standard for this kind of data has a meaningless acronym chosen to placate French and English speakers. The PAI standard succeeded an idealized standard for this kind of data developed for use in ephemerides and is defined relative to the geoid. This kind of data is provided alongside geophysical information by GPS satellites, which use it to find their position. The NIST F2 is used to calibrate this kind of data. The SI definition of this data's basic unit is used by the UTC standard and relies on the fundamental frequency of the cesium atom. For 10 points. Yeah, 10 points. And your bonus. Many graduates from the then-declining Academy of Gondishapur were hired to work at this institution for 10 points each, named the Institution of Learning, which was greatly expanded by Al-Mamun. Much of our knowledge regarding this Baghdad-based institution comes from Al-Tabari. Yes. The House of Wisdom was established by this caliphate's ruler, Harun al-Rashid. Al-Mansur established Baghdad as the capital of this caliphate, which succeeded the Umayyads. Yes. In the 11th century, this man spent 200,000 dinars to found an even greater academy in Baghdad. This Seljuk vizier wrote the Siyasatnama, which exemplifies a literary genre known as mirrors for princes. Answer. Bounce. This is Nizam al-Mulk, so that is 20 points. Cross at 15. The opening of a symphony by this composer was once thought to evoke an Adolf Butker poem that declares, "O turn, and change your course." Trombones and horns play a chorale in the parallel key of E-flat minor to open the Fairliek movement of this composer's third symphony, which is in 5 movements. This composer's B-flat major first symphony closes with a depiction of the title period in full bloom. This composer was inspired by the coronation of an archbishop at the Cologne Cathedral to write his third symphony, which is named for a river in which he would later attempt suicide by drowning in 1854. For 10 points, name this German composer of the Spring and Rena symphonies, who sometimes collaborated with his wife.
Schumann?
That's 10 points. And your bonus. In one play, Stroking a Bronze Atrocity by Barbadienne on the mantelpiece inspires a character to utter this line. For 10 points each, give this line delivered in that play by Garçon after he notes that there's no need for red-hot pokers.
Hell is other people.
Yes, the line "Hell is other people" appears in No Exit, a play by this French existentialist.
Jean-Paul Sartre.
Yes. Albert Camus, who played Garçon at the premiere of No Exit, met Sartre at a performance of this first play by Sartre. Its own hellish imagery includes a cavern to the underworld from which the dead emerge once a year to torment the wrongdoers of Argos.
The fleas.
No.
The flies.
Yes.
Oh.
That's 20 and done. Toss-up 16. Rudyard Kipling wrote a poem celebrating the Birkenhead drill that instituted a standard practice during these events. When news about one of these events reached London, the lutein bell at Lloyd's Coffee House was struck one time. One of these events in 1975 resulted in the mandatory adoption of Lauren systems. A tradition during these events is erroneously traced to the death of Edward Smith. A 1964 musical celebrated a nouveau riche socialite who survived one of these events named Molly Brown. The
Like sinking of ships.
Yeah, 10 points. He was on the Titanic. And your bonus. For 10 points each, answer the following about the vibration frequencies of a string. For small vibrations, both the frequencies and the speeds of the vibration vary with this function of the tension on the string. Answer. Bounce. They're looking for the square root. This word refers to waves that vibrate at integer multiples of the vibration frequency. A simple type of motion described by this word exhibits sinusoidal behavior. Yes. On stringed instruments, higher harmonics can be produced by placing the fingers at these points, which are the points on a standing wave, which do not vibrate.
Notes.
20 points.
Super cool question.
17. A speaker's distinction between these things can be measured by the Pillai score. Pillai score. These things show up as dark bands when visualized in spectrogram software like Trot, and can usually be identified by examining their first two formants. One of these things, represented by a lowercase epsilon, was gradually replaced by one representing a lowercase ash amongst Californians. These things are charted on the vertices of a trapezoid representing the mouth and range from open to close in the IPA. Single speech sounds that are represented by two of these things are called diphthongs. These 10 points. And your bonus. Mary E. Hobart, a member of this party, received 1 vote from the legislature in Washington state to become its senatress in 1897 for 10 points each, and by this political party whose platform was laid out in the Ocala demands.
I think they were populist, maybe in that area, right? Populist?
Yes. The populous Washington legislature passed laws giving more rights to people who took out these types of loans. Fannie Mae is one of several federal programs that subsidize these loans to promote home ownership.
Mortgages?
Yes. The populist orator Mary E. Lease reportedly told farmers in this state to raise less corn and more hell. An editorial by William Allen White asked, "What's the matter with this state?"
It might be Kansas. Kansas.
30 points.
Okay.
18. An untranslatable chant used in this religion that opens Iko Iko Azarak was popularized by Doreen Valiente. A tenet of this religion states that the energy that one puts into the world is returned threefold. That doctrine is called the Rule of Three. This religion's reed is a moral code that commands, "And ye harm none, do what ye will." The liturgical calendar of this religion is called the Wheel of the Year and includes 8 sabbats. One of this religion's founders, Gerald Gardner, was inspired by Margaret Murray's research into the historical worship of a horned god. This religion's practitioners are organized into covens. For 10 points, name this.
Wiccan.
Yeah, that's 10 points. And your bonus. The Golden Boy Kintaro grew up to be one of the 4 heavenly kings who served as a member of this family for 10 points each. In this family, Japanese warriors also served by the warrior monk Benkai. After a naval victory by this family, the nun of the 2nd rank threw herself into a sea along with a child emperor and the imperial regalia.
I'm going to say
Miyamoto?
About.
Taira?
It's Minamoto. The aforementioned Kintaro usually carried this type of weapon, which was a tool of the trade for American folk hero Paul Bunyan.
Oh, he had a axe.
He did. Minamoto no Reiko slew the monster Shuten Doji, who was one of these Japanese demons. These yokai were usually depicted as horned, club-wielding giants with red or blue skin.
Oni? Yeah, that's it. It had to be okay. Yeah, Oni.
20 points. Toss up 19. A biography of this author, written by the novelist War Trash, analyzes how lines like the wind of tens of thousands of miles long were inspired by his relocation to a mountainous region as a 5-year-old. This author wrote that it is so late that the dew soaks my gauze stockings, and that the steps are already quite white with dew in their 4-line jewel stairs grievance. This speaker wonders if it's hoarfrost on the ground in a much memorized. That's 10 points.
It is that one. Okay. That's a good job.
And your bonus. Alice Oswald's book Memorial removed everything from this poem except for its similes and deaths for 10 points each, and identified this classical text which Pat Barker adapted into her 2018 novel The Silence of the Girls. It was also the chronological first of 2 poems translated into English in a book of whole works by George Chapman.
Okay, Iliad.
Yes. In 2017, Emily Wilson became the first woman to translate this other epic poem by Homer into English, including its story of the Cyclops.
The Odyssey.
Yes. Wilson's translation opens by asking the muse to tell me about a man who, described by this English adjective translated from the Greek word polytropos, which literally means much turning.
Oh, so it's like the word is
Answer.
rage.
Bounce.
I was going to say
I don't know.
Time. It's complicated, so that is 20 points. And this is cost 20. This artist agreed to a reduced fee of 350 ducats rather than remove the three Marys from a painting where those women stare at a man operating a drill. Irvin Rock coined a fallacy name for this artist that an astigmatism was why he gave Saint Sebastian such a long neck. A figure with 2 faces appears to the right of a ghostly Laocoon wrestling with a snake in a painting by this author of the Disrobing of Christ. Andres Nunes commissioned a painting by this artist in which Saint Stephen and Augustine wait to carry the armored titled nobleman to heaven. This mannerist included a dark sky in his view of Toledo. For 10 points, name this.
El Greco.
That's 10 points. And your bonus, since 1978, belief in a strong correlation between the unemployment rate and this variable dropped by 65% among economists for 10 points each. Name this variable, which did not change unemployment rates, and a 1994 study by Card and Kruger comparing different values of it in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Answer. Bounce?
Minimum wage.
Yes. R and Dubé used that border county technique to study the employment impact of differences in the right of workers to join these organizations that can collectively bargain with employers.
Union?
Yes. In 1994, paper by Kruger found that this broad variable followed a Kuznets curve. In 1991, Larry Summers argued that some poor countries should make this variable worse to boost growth. Description is acceptable. Answer.
Debt to GDP rate.
Bounce.
Prices.
They want environmental quality, so that's 10 points. And that is the end of the game.
Alright, so final score, Walking Northwest, 160, Parkway West, 400.
Good game, both teams.
Good game, guys.
Nice job, guys.
what your plans for next year are.
Okay.
So, whenever you're ready.
I'm Gus Carvel. I'm a senior in next year. I will be studying filmmaking at Savannah College of Art and Design.
Congratulations. Welcome to Georgia.
Hi, I'm Rachel Israel. I'm a sophomore.
Welcome.
I'm Josh Fan. I'm a sophomore at RM.
Congratulations. Or sorry, welcome.
Joseph Chen, sophomore at RM.
Welcome. I guess congratulations on being students at RM, but yeah. But yeah, I have I'm like, you know, I'm at Tech, but I'm like really involved with the basically what is the film department at Tech, and one of my favorite professors went to SCAD, so I think, you know, it's a very good program.
Cool. Is everyone ready to get started?
Yes, we're
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Mike Bentley. I'm the head editor for the sets. We are on round 3. This round is sponsored by Ian Dreyer, and we have Great Valley and Richard Montgomery A. And we can get started.
Yep.
Toss up. Mutations in the ryanodine receptor cause a condition named for increasing this physiological variable dangerously high temperature power.
Nice, guys.
Bonus for Great Valley. 10 points each. Ansel following about wisdom contests in Norse mythology. After Thor keeps him up all night with Norse myth trivia questions, the dwarf Albus suffers this fate. In Greek mythology, this fate befalls the entire court of Polydectes after a foster child of Dictys returns to Seriphos.
Turning into stone.
Yes. In a lay from the poetic Ada, the giant Vafthrundir stakes his head on a wisdom contest against this one-eyed, spear-wielding ruler of the Aesir.
Odin.
After a friendly riddle contest with Heydrich, Odin flew away in the form of a hawk, inciting Heydrich to attack Odin with this weapon. This cursed sword was fated to bring about 3 evil deeds.
Oh, it's sure. Fafnir.
Over here.
No.
Tierfing, 20 points. Toss up 2. Kate Keller Kobayashi made a documentary about this painting's 1981 repatriation from a museum led at the time by Alfred Barr. A digital project from the Queen Sofia Museum on rethinking this painting contains an interview with Tony Shafrazi, a man who wrote Kill Lies All on it.
Guernica.
Power. Bonus. This process may begin with the deposition of an initial strike to serve as a foundation. For 10 points each, name this general process, a subtype of which includes galvanoplasty. A herring bloom cell can be used to determine the throwing power of a bath used in this process, which indicates its ability to cover uniformly.
Electroplating?
Yeah, the rate of electroplating can be calculated using the laws of electrolysis named for the scientist, who names a unit equal to the charge carried by a mole of electrons.
Faraday.
Electroplating is often used to apply this metal to surfaces as a form of gilding. Other methods to apply this metal may first dissolve it in aqua regia.
Gold.
30 points. Toss up 3. Women from a minority religious group in this country are routinely targeted by fake auction apps. This country's 2019 Citizenship Amendment Bill attracted criticism for denying one religious minority access to its National Register of Citizens. This country's right-wing Times Now TV channel routinely airs stories about so-called love jihads. In 2019, a presidential order revoked Article 370 protections, creating 2 new union territories in a contested...
India.
10 points. Bonus. This faction's leader, William Leggett, referred to his goals as the dupes of hope forever. For 10 points each, name this faction of very liberal Democrats who founded a splinter equal rights party in the 1830s. This faction was named for holding meetings using a brand of matches.
Firebrand. Fire eaters.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Fire eaters.
Over here.
Barn burner. Oh,
Locofocos. Locofoco ideas bled into the Young America movement, which embraced this idea coined by John O. Sullivan. This idea says that Americans have the right to annex the entire continent and spread democracy.
Manifest Destiny.
Locofoco ideas were also adopted by Samuel Dorr, who led a rebellion in this state to argue for universal male suffrage. The HMS Gaspee was burned off the coast of the state.
Rhode Island.
20 points. Toss up 4. The Soviet Union manufactured playing cards based on art from this culture to honor Yuri Nazarov's breakthrough research on them. American interest in these people was sparked by an expedition co-led by artist Frederick Catherwood that produced images such as lithograph of Stella D. The Temple of the Warriors built by this culture is a prime example of architecture from their late classic period. During the equinoxes, a serpent appears on the steps.
Maya.
10 points. Bonus. In a novella by this author, the title priest becomes depressed after hiding his true atheism for the good of his townspeople. For 10 points each, name is author of San Manuel Bueno, Martir, and Abel Sanchez, who coined the term nivola to describe his work Mist.
Unamuno. Direct.
Yes, Unamuno was a prominent member of a Spanish literary movement named for one of these things of 98. Federico Garcia Lorca was in a later group named for one of these things of 27.
Generation. Direct.
Unamuno referred to a set of stories by this earlier author with his collection of 3 exemplary novels. In Mist, Augusto disputes with Unamuno himself as to the relationship of this author to his character Don Quixote.
Cervantes. Direct.
30 points. Toss of 5. The title character of a novella from this modern-day country who attempts to show off by reciting opera verses consoles himself with the reasoning that a man is destined sometimes to have his head cut off. An author from this country wrote a novella whose title character tries to draw a perfect circle and declares things...
China.
Power. Bonus. Desdemona's Ave Maria and Giuseppe Verdi's Otello inspired an Act 3 scene in this opera in which the title character's wife, Marie, reads from the Bible. For 10 points each, name this opera in which an invention on a single note B plays in a scene set on a night with a blood-red moon overhead. Answer? No, over here.
Wojciech?
Yes. Marlis Peterson almost always used a voice double to perform the blood-curdling scream that ends this other Albenberg opera, whose title Femme Fatale is killed by Jack the Ripper.
Was it?
Over here.
I don't remember this one. No answer.
Lulu. Albenberg was a member of the second school of the city alongside Anton Webern and Arnold Schoenberg. This city's court opera was inaugurated with a performance of Don Giovanni with Emperor Franz Joseph in attendance.
Vienna.
Yes, 10 and 10. Toss of 6. One holder of this position who employed the midwives Shifra and Pua oversaw the construction of the supply depot Pithom. Yonis and Yambres served another holder of this position who demanded the same quota from his workers in Goshen even after ceasing to supply them with straw. 5 times that man in this position...
Pharaoh?
Power.
Nice. Good buzz.
Bonus. In 1837, 2 French professors fought a duel over the proper usage of this punctuation mark. 10 points each. Name this punctuation mark, used to terminate statements in C++. The winking emoticon is usually formed by a combination of this mark and a parentheses.
Semicolon.
An error in semicolon placement resulted in this city banning liquor sales for 6 years. In 1896, officials in this seat of Suffolk County banned $5 bills due to nudity on the bill, contributing to the phrase banned in the city.
Oh.
Suffolk.
Banned in...
Answer?
Kent.
Over here?
Boston.
Yes. This author of Player Piano declared all the semicolon does is show you've been to college. This man's college-educated brother pioneered using silver iodide for cloud seeding. Yes, 20 and 10.
Nice.
Toss up 7. In the 1950s, this company hired high school principal Mary Alexander to be the first African-American woman in its ads. It doesn't make cars, but Frank Mason Robinson created this company's iconic logo and Spencerian script. This company's products were marketed alongside those of its co-founder, Asa Candler. In 1985, this company's CEO, Roberto Goizueta, announced a reviled new version of its signature.
Coca-Cola.
10 points.
Nice.
Bonus. The covariant derivative of a divergence lists one of these mathematical objects denoted by capital G equals 0 according to the contracted Bianchi identities. For 10 points each, name these mathematical objects. One of them, often written using subscripts mu and nu, appears in the Einstein field equations.
Tensors.
The stress-energy tensor appears on the right-hand side of Einstein's field equations, which describes this theory that followed a decade after a similarly named special theory.
General. Yeah, general.
In Einstein's field equations, the metric tensor is multiplied by this constant denoted lambda, whose inclusion Einstein infamously called his greatest blunder.
Oh, cosmological constant maybe?
Yeah.
Cosmological constant?
30 points. Toss up 8. Martha Nussbaum's The Fragility of Goodness analyzes a speech about this concept, which compares Socrates to a statue of Silenus, which opens to reveal tiny statues inside. This concept is called a divine madness in a work that compares the soul to a chariot driven by 2 horses.
Justice?
No. Of different temperaments. It unites the elements into mixtures according to Empedocles, who placed it in opposition to strife. This concept is likened to a ladder that can be climbed to learn the form of beauty in a metaphor Socrates attributed to Diotima. Alcibiades delivers a drunken speech in that dialogue about this concept. For 10 points, Plato's Symposium is about what concept which the Greeks divided into philia, agape, and eros?
Love.
Yes. Bonus. This substance lends its name to the day on which paintings were finished prior to the exhibition at the Royal Academy. For 10 points each. Identify this coating, usually made from a resin dissolved in a drying oil that's applied to paintings to make them appear glossier. It shouldn't be confused with lacquer. Answer?
Vinyl.
Over here.
I was gonna say lacquer.
It's varnish. This artist's technical mastery was on display on varnishing days. This British landscape artist painted the Fighting Temeraire in Rain, Steam, and Speed.
Turn.
Yes. The subscription ticket for this artist's Sigismunda series depicts time seated next to a varnish jar. This artist of Gin Lane sometimes lends his name to the engraver's Copyright Act of 1735. Answer? No, over here.
Maybe Wedgwood?
Hogarth. So 10 points. Toss up 9. A poem in this language describes how we dig a grave in the air. There one lies at ease. Though we didn't write it in it, Yehudi Machai's childhood speaking this language influences colloquial poetry. A poem.
Yiddish?
No. A poem in this language describes drinking the black milk of daybreak and power.
Nice.
Bonus. Patrick Lee Fermer's travelogue, A Time of Gifts, describes how at age 18 he decided to walk from the Hook of Holland to the city. For 10 points each in the city. Early in Murder on the Orient Express, Perrault plans to visit the Bosporus, which splits in this city's Asian and European parts.
Istanbul.
Fermer passed the time on his 2,500-mile journey by reciting this set of poems by the author of Ars Poetica, one of which originated the Latin phrase carpe diem.
Horatian Odes.
Yes. This author recounted Fermer's penchant for singing Greek songs in his memoir, Bitter Lemons. This author described the dalliances of L.G. Darley in the novels Justine, Balthazar, Mount Olive, and Clea.
It's Marquis de Sade.
Sure.
Marquis de Sade.
Over here.
Durrell.
Yes, 20 and 10 on the steel. Toss up 10. Thomas Huxley dedicated a lecture to a piece of this rock in which he described its formation to the men of Norwich. This rock and sandstone serve as petroleum reservoirs in the oil fields of the Gulf Coast and North Sea. Close examination of this rock will reveal countless discarded tests of foraminifera. A vast bed of this rock underlying most of Europe was formed in the shallow seas of the Cretaceous, which is named for it. The
Basalt.
No. The high porosity of this rock produces an extremely vigorous reaction in the acid test. This rock is marginally harder than gypsum and thus produces less dust when rubbed on the surface. From Poisson formed calcium carbonate rock used to write on blackboards.
Chalk.
Yes. Bonus. According to historian Martha L. Rose, this man's second son is the only significant instance of a dead person's appearance in the surviving Greek literature. For 10 points each, remember this king of Lydia, whose other son, Attis, died prior to this man's failed conquest of Persia.
Croesus.
Different.
Croesus.
The tale of Croesus and his sons are told by this Greek historian, often considered the father of history for his chronicle of the Greco-Persian Wars.
Herodotus.
Herodotus relates a dialogue between Croesus and this Athenian lawmaker, whose extensive travels abroad included a visit to a temple in Cyprus that was named in his honor.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yes, 30
Nice.
points. That's a half.
All right, at the half, we have a score of 110 for Great Valley and 290 for Richard Montgomery. I'm just wondering, is the Zoom recorder?
Yeah. Should be. Let's go.
Thank you for that.
I just. Are you like stopping every recording between each round?
No, so it's actually, so usually I use that as a sound lab. In this case, we're just using it as the input for the team that does a better job at
Right,
but
yeah.
maybe in the afternoon I'll use my longer
We can talk
cable to
about
make
it.
that
We can talk
a little
about it.
closer to.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Alright, is everyone ready?
Yep.
Alright, we're on toss 11. In 2005, Douglas Levere published a photo book that tried to recreate all the photos of this city and of Bernice Abbott's collection of its changing state. Bill Cunningham spent decades biking around the city to photograph fashionable...
New York.
Bonus for Richard Montgomery. The narrator of a book describes how the daring spirit came upon him, provoking him to perform a vigorous and sudden snatch to bring this man to the ground. For 10 points each, under this slave breaker, who the narrator is sent to by the olds, an incident describing the author's narrative life.
Agree. No?
No, it's Douglas.
Oh, Douglas.
No.
No.
Answer?
Legree.
Over here. Sums Edward Covey. This founder of the North Star newspaper described his rebellion against Edward Covey in his slave narrative.
Douglas.
In the narrative life of Frederick Douglass, Douglas describes how his mother, who had this first name, would walk 12 miles just to see him. Another woman with this first name used the alias Linda Brent to publish her incidents in the life of the slave girl.
Oh, it's a brown heroine? That's not right.
Answer?
Harriet.
Yes.
Nice.
20 points. Toss of 12. Some electric versions of this instrument were made to be Leslie-proof, preventing them from connecting to Leslie speakers. Booker T. Jones used a version of this instrument to establish the Memphis soul sound on Green Onions. A massive one of these instruments, named for John Wanamaker, is played twice a day.
Pipe organ.
Power.
Nice.
Good one.
A piano sonata by this composer begins with a legendaire tempo in 4/8 with alternating chromatically descending major thirds and diminished sevenths. For 10 points each, name his composer who used the dissonant minor ninth interval in his Black Mass sonata.
Scriabin?
Yes. In works such as Prometheus, the poem of fire, Scriabin frequently used his mystic chord, in which this interval is stacked. This interval, which can be augmented to form a tritone, can be inverted to create a fifth.
Wait, I'll make it
Answer?
third.
Over here.
Fourth.
Yes. Scriabin composed 24 of these types of pieces in every key for his Opus 11 collection. These types of pieces were originally named for the fact that they served as introductions to a collection of pieces, often being paired with fugues in the Baroque era.
Preludes.
Yes, 20 and 10. Toss up 13. This is the lowest number of electrons for which the Tanabe-Sugano diagram distinguishes between low and high spins. A geometry with this many ligands is almost exclusively high spin due to possessing energy splitting equal to roughly 4/9 of an octahedral complex, and it contains 3 high energy T sub 2G orbitals and 2 lower energy E sub G orbitals. The anti-cancer drug cisplatin has this many ligands.
4.
Good list.
Bonus, the polarization identity says that if a parallelogram law holds, an inner product can be induced by this type of operation. For 10 points each, name this type of operation that obeys the triangle inequality and assigns each vector in a vector space a non-negative value.
Like normalization?
Over here.
Projection, maybe? Projection?
I just have norm. In a complete vector space, every Cauchy sequence has this property. The alternating harmonic series has this property's conditional form.
Divergence.
Over here.
Convergence?
Yes. For a vector space, scalar multiplication must have this property with respect to vector addition. Multiplication has this property with regards to addition because A times the sum B plus C equals A times B plus A times C.
Distributed.
Yeah, 10 and 10. Toss up 14. Paul Cantor argues that sections of this novel set in rural Iping allows the author to criticize Adam Smith. In one scene, this novel's title character is chased out of the Omniums, a department store where he gets the idea to buy wigs and fake noses. Its protagonist experiments on a cat, drawing unwanted attention from a neighbor who suspects him of being a vivisectionist. The protagonist of this novel endeavors to start a reign of terror and had earlier avoided eating in front of guests at the Coach and Horses Inn so that no one would see his unusual mouth. This novel's title character, Griffin, is a scientist who adjusts the refractive...
The Invisible Man.
Yes. Bonus. This man told his subordinate Stanley Druckenmiller to go for the jugular and make a massive bet that a pound would be devalued on Black Wednesday in 1992. For 10 points each, name is founder of the Quantum Fund, who earned the nickname the man who broke the Bank of England. He founded Central European University. Soros was born Georgi Schwartz in this modern-day country. This country's prime minister, this country's current prime minister, Viktor Orban, was once a Soros Foundation beneficiary.
Hungary.
This longtime Malaysian leader made anti-Semitic remarks about Soros during the Asian financial crisis. This author of the book The Malay Dilemma was re-elected prime minister in 2018 at age 92. Answer?
Lee Kuan Yew.
Over here.
Lee.
This is Mahathir Mohamad, 20 points. So sorry. Toss 15. Description acceptable. A joint stock company funded Black Jack Norris's disastrous counter to this campaign, which lost many men to enemy Zabras. Numerous medals with the phrase, "he blew his wins," were cast following this campaign. Pope Sixtus V promised a 1 million ducat reward following the successful completion of this campaign. Prior to the key battle in this campaign, one side broke its crescent formation out of fear of hellburners. Legends about this campaign spread in numerous Tilbury ballads.
Spanish Armada.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nice.
10 points. Bonus. Books such as Authentic Leadership are included in a 14-book ultimate collection on this concept issued by the Harvard Business Review. For 10 points each, give this two-word term popularized in a 1995 book by Daniel Goleman that describes one's ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings.
That makes sense. Emotional intelligence.
Dina Mistilis published a book on emotional intelligence for people in this job. A person in this profession coined the term yips for a psychological condition affecting them.
Is it like performer?
Answer?
Actor.
Over here.
Police.
This is an athlete. This psychologist formulated the earlier concept of emotional strength. Eleanor Roosevelt exemplified a person who obtained self-actualization in this psychologist's hierarchy of needs.
Maslow.
20 points. Toss-up 16. Many of this author's swans were scandalized by an excerpt of his unfinished novel, Answered Prayers. A character name for this author's great-aunt Sook gives Buddy a kite in the story A Christmas Memory. This author wrote a book detailing Officer Dewey's interrogation of a man sent to the corner for an action that netted him just a portable radio and $40. That nonfiction novel by this author chronicles a gruesome crime committed by Perry
Capote.
Yes, Capote for 10 points. Bonus. A prince from this Chinese kingdom supposedly used a kite to fly himself 2 miles in the 4th century BCE. For 10 points each, name this kingdom, which was sandwiched between the Qin, Qi, Chu, and Han during the Warring States period. Cao Cao ruled a state with the same name as this one during the Three Kingdoms period.
Way direct.
Many Chinese kites feature images of these mythical flying and fire-breathing creatures, which were strongly associated with the emperor.
Dragon.
Emperor Wu Di of the Liang dynasty used a kite as an SOS signal during a siege of the city. 2 soldiers held a contest to kill 100 people with a sword during a later event in the city.
Nanjing.
30 points. Also, in Guizhou, it's common for a mother to bring some of these objects wrapped in red paper to the family of the girl her son
Eggs?
No. Plans on marrying. A Japanese faux pas involving the crying form of these objects where liquid is allowed to drip, faux pas is the crying form where liquid is allowed to drip off them like tears. A ritual called kotsagwe is traditionally the only time in which 2 people will touch the same object with one of these things and is done following cremation in Japanese funerals. A common commencement ritual involves breaking apart waribashi, the name for a disposable type of these objects. Long metal examples of these objects used when deep frying often have bamboo tips to keep the cook from getting burned. But if these eating utensils commonly used in East Asia?
Chopstick.
Yes. Bonus from Great Valley. This organism can functionally transfer memories to its offspring to avoid undesirable bacteria. For 10 points each, name this model organism, which has exactly 959 somatic cells in its hermaphroditic form and 131 in its adult male form, all of which have had their developmental fates mapped.
C. elegans.
The passage of memories in C. elegans occur through CER1, an example of one of these structures that uses a RNA intermediate. DNA equivalents are non-replicative and called I guess these DNA equivalents are non-replicative and called jumping genes.
Transposons.
Yeah. The inactivation of transposons through methylation and the modification of histones is studied in this field that focuses on phenotype changes that occur without affecting DNA's sequence.
Epigenetics.
30 points.
Nice.
Toss up 18. This character fabricates a story about a Massilian priestess who used poppy seeds to drug the serpent Ladon. This character admits to feeling the scars of the old flame before calling for the earth to swallow them up. In the underworld, this character wanders the fields of mourning and ignores a visitor's pleas. This character...
Tiresias?
No. This character strikes a deal for as much land as she can cover with an ox hide, then cuts the ox hide into strips so that it can surround the hill of Byrsa. This woman calls for an avenger to rise up from her bones on her funeral pyre after finding out that her lover is sailing for Italy. 10 points. Same as Queen of Carthage, whose doomed love.
Dido.
10 points. Bonus. 10 points each. Identify the following about old-growth forests. This state's Baxter State Park contains over 23,000 acres of old-growth forests, and this state's highest peak, Mount Katahdin. The Appalachian Trail runs through the 100-mile wilderness in this state.
Maine.
Yes. Many of the last old-growth forests in the Pacific Northwest were saved to preserve the habitat of one of these animals. Bumper stickers reading "Kill one of these animals, save a logger" were common in Northwest logging communities in the early 1990s.
A tick, maybe? Tick.
Over here.
Bear? Bear?
It's an owl. Biologist Rachel Holt has argued that this Canadian province has vastly overcounted its old-growth forest acreage. This province's capital is Victoria.
British Columbia.
Yes, 20 points. Toss-up 19. Description acceptable. The 1832 massacre at Duffy's Cut in Pennsylvania was a nativist...
Irish?
No, sorry. Was a nativist reaction to one of these events. Dilip Mahalanobis developed a low-tech ORT therapy to counter these events in Bangladesh. An 1831 riot named for one of these events sacked a building on Sanaya Square in St. Petersburg. A Stephen Johnson book about how one of these events in 1854 changed science, cities, and the modern world is titled The Ghost Map. UN peacekeepers responding to a 2010 earthquake caused one of these events in Haiti.
Cholera outbreak.
10 points. Bonus. A lion sits on one of these objects in one of Ashoka's pillars erected at Sarnath. For 10 points each, identify this plant that symbolizes beings who rise up through samsara to achieve enlightenment. A Mahayana Sutra named for this plant contains the parable of the burning house.
Lotus.
The lotus is one of the 8 auspicious symbols of Buddhism. Another of the symbols is one of these objects that represents Dharma and has spokes that represent the Eightfold Path.
Wheel.
This woman had a dream of a white elephant carrying a lotus flower entering her right side, foretelling that she would give birth to Gautama Buddha.
No.
Answer?
Mama Buddha.
Over here?
Maya?
Yes, 20 and 10. Last toss-up. In natural units, a law named for this physicist includes the factor 1 over the exponential of frequency over temperature minus 1. Differentiating that equation named for this physicist shows that it peaks at about 2.8 kT, which leads to one form of Vion's displacement law. That equation named for this physicist...
Boltzmann?
No. Converges to 0 at high frequencies, but reproduces the Rayleigh-Jeans law at low frequencies, which resolved the ultraviolet catastrophe by describing the spectrum of blackbody radiation. This physicist's namesake constant over momentum gives the de Broglie wavelength. A photon's energy and frequency are related by, for 10 points, what pioneering German quantum physicist's namesake constant symbolized?
Planck.
Yes. 10 points. And your bonus. In a footnote to the 1912 edition of this novel, readers are told that they can therefore choose between the endings, as the author did not originally intend for one character to get married to a Gretelman. For 10 points each, name this novel that opens on Guy Fawkes Night in the village of Egdon Heath.
The Return of the Native.
Was written by this author of Tess of the D'Urbervilles.
Party.
Return of the Native was originally serialized in Belgravia magazine with illustrations by the brother of this poet. The poem by this man opens, "Glory be to God for dappled things."
Hopkins.
30 points.
At the end of our game, at the end of the game, our final score is 250 for Great Valley and 520 for Sherman Montgomery A. Good game, both teams.
Good game, guys.
You have 260. All right. What do you have? Do we agree on halftime? 110 to 290.
Oh, never mind, I see my error, we're good.
Okay, sure.
Or
Right. Okay, I want to make sure I have everything right. Full screen packet. All right. Welcome to round 4. This round is sponsored by James Madison University Quiz Bowl. This is a game that features, on my left, Stevenson B. from Lincolnshire, Illinois.
Yeah.
And on my right, Richard Montgomery A. from Rockville, Maryland. Are both teams ready to begin?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. That's one of both teams. We'll start with toss-up 1. The legal concept of murum arius atigit derives from a Roman policy governing these events described by Julius Caesar. A parallel name for these events was repeatedly employed by the Marquis de Vauban. Polyidus of Thessaly created a gigantic helepolis for use in one of these events. In the ancient world, it was common to construct an earthwork mold during the siege. That is 20 points.
Nice.
And your bonus. This process produces cells from both myeloid and lymphoid progenitors for 10 points each, and is a process of producing blood cells, which occurs through namesake stem cells found in the bone marrow. Answer.
Hematopoiesis. Yeah.
Hematopoiesis?
Yes.
Nice.
The kidneys enhance red blood cell formation through erythropoietin in response to low levels of this compound, a situation called hypoxia.
Oxygen.
That's right. Glycoproteins that stimulate hematopoietic stem cells are named CSFs, where the C stands for this word. This word refers to the fact that cells derived from a single stem cell in a culture would cluster around the original cell's location.
Central?
Sure. Central.
That's
Compact?
It's colony. That is 10 and 10. Toss up 2. Carbon migrations may expand one of these structures to enhance carbocation stability. The formation of an oxophosphetane containing one of these structures controls the stereochemistry of the Wittig reaction. Molecules containing these structures and significant delocalization may produce a roughly 7 ppm NMR shift due to a namesake current. Lactones are esters containing one of these structures.
Double bonds?
No. Containing one of these structures, which are present in sugar structures depicted in Hayworth projections. Planarity, appropriate electron count, and one of these structures satisfy Hugel's rules for aromaticity. 5 or 6 membered examples of these structures are the most stable. Benzene contains, for 10 points, what kind of molecular structure produced by a cycloaddition?
Rings.
That's 10 points. And bonus for Stevenson B. A 2016 review of this hoax found that the amount of archaeological knowledge required to perpetrate it ruled out Arthur Conan Doyle as a suspect for 10 points each. Named this hoax where Charles Dawson attached an orangutan jaw to a human cranium and claimed it was an early species of hominid named after a site in Sussex.
Piltdown Man?
Yes. Dawson initially referred to the Piltdown Man using this outdated term, implying it was the transition fossil marking the evolutionary point where apes turned into modern humans.
Missing link?
Yes. Another potential missing link was this Australopithecus africanus skull from South Africa, partly named for belonging to a youthful hominid.
I guess so. Lucy?
Bounce.
I was thinking Lucy too.
Time. This is the Tone Child, so that's 20 points. That's great. The Paganini of this instrument, Giovanni Bottesini, composed a grand duo concertante for 2 of them and orchestra. Domenico Dragonetti popularized the German style of playing this instrument. This instrument plays a muted solo beginning with the notes D, E, F, E, D, under alternating timpani strokes to open the 3rd movement of Gustav Mahler's First Symphony, in reference to the nursery rhyme Frère Jacques. This instrument, which descends from the viol da gamba and is thus, that's here.
Cello?
No. And is thus tuned in fourths, uniquely replaces the 2nd violin in Franz Schubert's Traut Quintet. The cello is often doubled in a lower octave line for 10 points, while the lowest pitched string instrument in the orchestra.
Bass.
That's 10 points. And bonus for Stevenson B. The Dalsa ritual, in which the Sheikh of the Sabi order rode a horse over his followers, was held to honor this event for 10 points each, named this event that occurred during the Year of the Elephant. The Burda, an ode by al-Busiri, is recited on a holiday commemorating this event called Mawlid.
The Hajj.
Bounce.
The Muhammad's escape to Medina.
It's the birth of Muhammad. Many Mawlid texts touch on this episode of Muhammad's life, his journey from Mecca to Medina.
That's the Hajj.
I don't know.
Bounce.
There's a word for it.
The word is hijra. Another trip recounted in Mawlid text is the night journey, Muhammad's journey to the Dome of the Rock in this city. The Temple Mountain is in this holy city of the 3 major Abrahamic religions.
Jerusalem.
That is 10 points. Toss 4. An essay by the scholar argues that a successful author is a sub-creator who makes a secondary world which your mind can enter. An essay by the scholar contains an allegory about an old stone tower toppled by people looking in vain for hidden carvings and inscriptions. This author of On Fairy Stories defended the literary merit of creatures like the dragon and Grendel in Beowulf.
J.R.R. Tolkien.
That's 10 points. And your bonus. Conservator Michael Skalka has discussed how asphaltum pigment makes this artist's paintings especially hard to preserve. For 10 points each, name this American artist fond of mixing tobacco juice and tar into his paintings. This artist's painting, The Racetrack, Death on a Pale Horse, is at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Answer.
Homer.
Bounce. Time. This is Albert Ryder. Ryder was the only American included in the Old Masters section of this event. Walt Kuhn and Arthur B. Davies helped organize this 1913 exhibition featuring works such as Edvard Munch's Vampire.
The Vienna Succession?
Bounce.
Could be the World's Fair.
World's Fair.
This is called the arm ratio. Ryder's legacy has been damaged due to countless numbers of these works, which can be detected by looking for things like anachronistic paint pigments.
Forgeries? Forgeries?
That's 10 points. Toss of 5. On Election Day in 1857, the Chunkers and other nativist gangs in the city started an anti-Catholic riot that killed 8 people. In 1848, 76 enslaved people escaped this city on board the Pearl, only for bad weather to doom their chance at freedom. This city was the eastern terminus of a waterway nicknamed
Baltimore?
No. This city was the eastern terminus of a waterway nicknamed the Grand Old Ditch. After designing the Charleston County Courthouse, James Hogan was asked to design a prominent building in this city. Benjamin Banneker and Andrew Ellicott led the first surveys of this city. Contrary to popular belief, only 1% of the city was built on swampland according to the L'Enfant plan of this city. For 10 points, in the city burned by the British in the War of 1812, damaging the White House.
Washington, D.C.
That's 10 points. And bonus for Stevenson B. The practical value of this discipline was demonstrated when a wireless spectrum auction did a double the predicted $10 billion for 10 points each, and ended up by this discipline, whose theory was elucidated in 1944 book by Oskar Morgenstern and John von Neumann. Answer.
Economic theory.
Bounce.
Oh, sorry, you should have prompted on economics, sir.
I'm sorry, yeah, prompt.
Keynesian economics?
No, sorry, bounce.
Supply side.
I have game theory. Matching pennies is an example of one of these games where the payoffs always come out to the same value. This term refers to any situation where making one player better off makes another player equally worse off.
Zero sum.
Yes. In this game, Alice wants to go to the ballet while Bob wants to go to a boxing match. Alice and Bob must decide which event to attend after they are separated in this game. Answer.
Prisoner's dilemma.
Bounce.
What? The Saturday night.
This is the Battle of the Sexes, so that is 10 points. So my apologies for possible 6. A seminar named for this man was criticized for having film director Paul Verhoeven as a member. The criterion of embarrassment is used to assess the historicity of events in this man's life. An E instead of an I is used in the spelling of a name. An E instead of an I in the spelling of a name makes it unclear whether Suetonius wrote about the followers of this man. 3 scholarly quests about this man's life began after the publication of a 1906 Albert Schweitzer work. In Book 20, Chapter 9 of the Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus mentions James as the brother of this man, who was killed on the orders of Pontius Pilate. For 10 points, name this religious leader who most...
Jesus.
10 points.
Wait.
And your bonus for Richard Montgomery. Along with Nikolai Joukowsky, this scientist names a theorem that gives lift as density times velocity at infinity, all times the circulation. For 10 points each, name the scientist. Fluid dynamicists use a method for solving differential equations that this scientist co-developed with Carl Runge.
Navier.
Answer.
Navier?
Bounce.
Yeah, sure.
Bernoulli?
It's a Kuta. The Kuta-Joukowsky theorem is applied to these parts of an airplane, which generate lift and can have jets attached to them.
Wings.
Yes. Kuta's condition can be illustrated using these lines that are parallel to the fluid velocity. The way these lines pass smoothly around a vehicle in aerodynamic designs inspired the use of a wind tunnel in designing the Chrysler Airflow.
Airflow.
Answer.
Flow lines.
Bounce.
Say it.
Aileron?
They're streamlines, so that is 10 points. 7. A poet who mainly used this language wrote that, I'm going to hide behind language in their collection, extracting the stone of madness. A poem in this language repeats, pretend I'm chaste, and is titled, You Want Me White. 1.
Spanish?
That's 20 points. And bonus for Richard Montgomery. The first feature film made with this technology, Becky Sharp, was panned due to the unnatural skin tones it produced on the actors. For 10 points each, identified this brand name technology that required extremely bright lights to capture shots onto 3 strips of film.
Technicolor?
Yes, Elizabeth Arden's Technicolor-friendly makeup first appeared in the 1937 version of this film. Two later versions of this film cast Judy Garland and Barbara Streisand as Esther.
A Star is Born.
Yes, this fashion magazine warned its readers not to use Arden's makeup for most occasions because it was too garish. Anna Wintour has edited this rival of Harper's Bazaar, Elle, and Cosmopolitan since 1988.
Vogue.
That's 30 points. That was an 8. The first modern drug of this type, now primarily used to treat glaucoma, is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor acetazolamide. Drugs of this type that inhibit epithelial sodium channels act in a potassium-sparing manner. These drugs, along with beta blockers, angiotensin inhibitors, and ACE inhibitors, are agents of choice for chronic heart failure. The most potent of these substances, like furosemide, act on the ascending loop, while thiazide examples act on the sodium chloride transporter of the distal convoluted tubule. These drugs help lower blood pressure in part by reducing blood volume and are used by athletes attempting to cheat drug tests.
Steroids?
No. For 10 points, what types of drugs cause an increase in urine production?
Diuretic.
10 points. Bonus for Joel Montgomery. Thanks to his tireless champion and translator Ivan Turgenev, this French author gained fame in Russia before France. For 10 points each, named this writer of Germinal, who defended Alfred Dreyfus in the article J'accuse.
Zola.
Yes, Turgenev was also was a promoter of Jules, an author with this surname, who co-wrote an influential diary with his brother Edmond. Those inseparable brothers with this surname co-wrote novels like Germanie laissez trop.
Goncourt.
Yes. Turgenev claimed that his own character, Akim, was one of the same caliber, as this other character. In an 1852 novel, this husband of Aunt Chloe saves little Ava from drowning.
Uncle Tom.
Answer?
Uncle Tom.
30?
Really?
Nice.
2009. Farmers were given the right to engage in these events by the Fraser-Lemke Act of 1934. Following these events, FPML guidelines mandate that sub-Tier 1 stakeholders are lowest in seniority and thus have the lowest priority. A 2005 paper co-authored by Elizabeth Warren argued that individuals who start these events were likely to have had a medical emergency. Sorry.
Bankruptcy?
That is 20 points.
Nice.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's 20 points and bonus for Stevenson B. Bakuto were itinerant workers in this industry in Japan for 10 points each. Name this industry. Portuguese merchants allowed this industry to operate Kino in Macau, which is today the world's capital for this industry.
Gambling?
Yes. These Japanese crime syndicates are believed to have formed out of Bakuto. Many of these mafia-like organizations get full-body tattoos, a tradition shared with the Bakuto.
Yakuza?
Yes. This historical work claims that Emperor Tenmu played Sugoroku, a backgammon-like game that was later banned due to its player's propensity for gambling. Unlike the Kojiki, this work of history extends until the 8th century.
Japanese kingdom.
That's
Nihon Shogi.
That's 10, and that's 20 and 10. And just 1 second, could you please pick up your new tag? You can walk around to the left.
Yours fell off.
Oh.
Which one? Wait, this one's yours.
All right.
They got some.
Good to go. All right. This will be toss-up time. After an irksome encounter with the governor Pythias, this man had Pythias' son cut in two, then instructed his soldiers to march through the two halves of the dead body. The mother of this king's mistress was horribly disfigured on the orders of his jealous wife, Amistris. Herodotus claims that this ruler ordered his men to drop chains in the ocean and last the ocean
Darius the First?
No. And last the ocean 300 times after the destruction of his pontoon bridges. Scholars most often identify King Ahasuerus from the Book of Esther with this ruler, who had a throne set up on Mount Aigaleo so that he could watch his navy's performance at the Battle of Salamis. For 10 points, name this hubristic king of Persia who invaded Greece to avenge the defeat of his father Darius.
Xerxes?
Yes, that's 10 points. Bonus for Stevenson D. A character from this city experiences a phenomenon she calls dissolving margins for 10 points each. Named this city, where characters nicknamed Lila and Lenu grew up in novels such as The Story of a New Name.
Sorry, the city you said?
New Delhi?
That's
Dublin.
It's Naples. The Story of a New Name is part of this author's series, The Neapolitan Novels. An intrusive 2016 investigation by Claudio Gatti sought to reveal the pseudonymous author's identity.
It's a Geo something.
Answer. Facts.
Elena Ferrante.
Yes. Ferrante's true identity was supposedly confirmed in a fake interview by prankster Tommaso De Benedetti, whose other exploits include pretending to be a Czech ambassador in 2020, in which guise he claimed that this author of the unbearable likeness of being had died.
Oh, Kundera?
That's 10 and 10. That is that.
Alright, so it's 140 for Stevenson B and 180 for Richard Montgomery A.
I had
And-
130.
Sure.
I have 140 as well.
Alright, what do we have at 5?
570.
I have 80. So they got 10 on the steel and bonus 1, and then 10 and 20, 40.
Oh, I had that as a 10.
Which bonus are we on?
Bonus 2.
Oh,
Bonus
10.
2, I have
Yes,
the
yep, you're right.
first 2 for 20.
Yeah.
That's what I have. Okay. Do both teams agree on this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 140 to 80.
Yep.
Yeah.
And are both teams ready to continue with the second half?
Yes.
Alright. Best of luck to both teams. Here's toss of 11. The Super Grandfathers from this country recorded a breakout album in which Raya Cooder played slide guitar. A Vim Vendors documentary captures artists in this country's A-Grim Studios recording an album that opens with a trova song titled Chan Chan. The film Too Many Girls popularized a carnival dance from this country where participants kick out their legs on the 4th beat. A 1996 world music album named for this album's a 1996 world music album was named for this country's Buena Vista Social Club. In the 1930s, a band from this country called Arcaño y sus Maravillas pioneered a variation of the danzón genre that eventually...
Argentina.
No, Italy. That eventually gave way to mambo for 10 points. Conga drummer Desiarnaz was born in what country, the home of the rumba?
Cuba.
10 points. I'm sorry, I got a slide notification. Never mind. Alright, and bonus for Richard Montgomery. A basic model of this process treats a surface as energetically homologous as all sites as equivalent and assumes that at full capacity only a monolayer can form, for 10 points each. In this process where molecules bind to the surface of a material. Highly porous substances are preferred for this process due to their increased surface areas.
Adsorption.
Yes. Physadsorption is a type of adsorption that is mediated by van der Waals forces, which consist of Keesom forces, Debye forces, and this class of forces between instantaneous induced dipoles.
London dispersion.
Yes. A simple model of an adsorption is named for this proposer of the 18-electron rule, which also named the American Chemical Society's Surface Science Journal.
ACS.
Answer.
ACS.
X.
Sure.
It is named for Irving Langmuir. That's 20 points. 2012. In 2018, the NSF transferred control of one of these things to the University of Central Florida without an increase in funding. 38 Kupuna were arrested in 2019 after blockading an access road for a proposed one of these things. The namesake of one of these things fired a gay employee during the Lavender Scare, which has prompted...
Airport.
No. Which has prompted a recent renaming petition. After a lengthy cooling period in early 2022, one of these things used a device called NIR cam for alignment. One of these things in Puerto Rico collapsed in 2020. A controversial 30-meter one of these things is being built on Mauna Kea for 10 points. The James Webb Telescope is, sorry, I goofed on that. It's very hard. So I revealed the answer. Do we need a replacement?
Yeah, so read a replacement.
So there are 21 toss-ups, so...
Yeah, so read toss-up 21.
That only goes to Stephen Simby.
Yeah.
My apologies for that. So Richard Montgomery, you cannot pause on this toss-up, and this can only, yeah. My apologies for that. So this is a replacement toss-up only for Stephen Simby.
So read toss-up 21 is fine.
Read 21, you're right. Okay, replacement for Stephen Simby. A 1992 New York Times op-ed by orthodontist Sheldon Peck argued that the dental features of this monument meant that it does not depict the man who erected a stele next to it. A ruler who was promised white and red crowns constructed the dream stele next to this monument. A team led by Giovanni Battista Caviglia successfully tried to excavate this monument, but did find a piece of a cobra that was once affixed to its head. This monument features a headdress called a nemes, and most likely depicts a ruler named Khafre. Legend has it that a cannonball shot by Napoleon destroyed this object's nose. For 10 points, name this monumental Egyptian sculpture of a mythical creature.
The Sphinx.
That's 10 points. And now I read the bonus corresponding to that cycle. Alright, bonus for Stephen Simby. Followers of this man believed in the doctrine of the transmigration of souls for 10 points each, identified this Greek philosopher who founded a school in Croton. According to legend, by listening to blacksmiths at work, this philosopher discovered the frequency ratios underlying musical harmony.
Oh, Pythagoras. Yeah. Pythagoras.
Yes. Pythagoras claims to remember his previous incarnations, including his life at Pyrrhus as a fisherman from this island. Apollo and Artemis were born on this Greek island.
No, it's called That's right.
Okay,
Leo?
That's
Bounce.
Delos?
Yes.
Oh.
Arabic traditions held that Pythagoras was taught the secrets of this figure based on a Greek deity syncretized with thought. This figure was the purported author of the Emerald Tablet and alchemical text. Answer. Bounce.
Nicholas.
Time. The answer is Hermes Trismegistus. So that is 10 and 10. Toss up 13. Characters originally from this novel transform into koi fish after jumping into water in Ni Vos, the Chosen and the Beautiful. Maureen Corrigan argued that one of the first graphic novel moments in Western literature occurs due to a dot that represents a dot on the last page of this novel. Michael Pekarovsky's argument that this novel is a Jewish passage narrative examines its references to the fictional book The Rise of Colored Empires, as well as
Heart of Darkness?
No. As well as its portrayal of the bootlegging gambler Meyer Wolsheim. John G. Irwin connected the light of a movie screen to this novel's symbol of a green light. For 10 points, name this novel largely set on East Egg by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Great Gatsby.
That's 10 points. Most for students in B. The protagonist of this novel has a religious awakening at the Temple of the Fire, baptized on the same day that his brother Roy is stabbed. For 10 points each, name this novel about John Grimes' relationship with his religious father, Gabriel. Answer.
Red Badge.
You tell it on the mountain.
Yes. Go Tell It on the Mountain is a novel by this gay black expatriate author who also wrote the novel Giovanni's Room.
Baldwin.
Yes. This other novel by Baldwin partly takes its title from a W.C. Handy blues song set in Memphis and centers on Tish and Bonnie, the latter of whom is in jail after being falsely accused of rape. Answer. Bounce.
It feels Street for Talk.
That's 20 on the scale.
That's not.
Wait, sorry, wait. 10 and 20, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So 14. They got 10 for Baldwin and, yeah, okay. First and third stolen. Toss of 14. Matches always exist in the game Double because its cards form a finite example of these objects that has been augmented with intersections at infinity. Every boundary point of a convex set is supported by one of these objects. According to the ham sandwich theorem, there exists one of these objects that can evenly split 3 labeled sets of points. These objects may be defined in point normal form by using any 3 non-collinear points and taking the cross product of their vectors. 2 distinct examples of these objects will intersect planes. That's 10 points.
Nice.
And bonus for RM. In a thought experiment by this author, 2 people are trapped in a house while one of them grows, eventually crushing the other. For 10 points each, name this philosopher who used the example of people seeds taking root in a house. This thinker also imagined the society of music lovers kidnapping someone to save a dying violinist.
It's not Mencius, is it? Yeah. Not gonna be.
Answer.
Mencius.
Bounce.
This is Schubert's thing. Schubert.
It's Judith Jarvis Thompson. Those examples appear in a Thompson paper that offers a defense of this practice, which is supported by the pro-choice movement.
Abortion.
Yes. Thompson also modified this thought experiment introduced by Philip Foot. In his thought experiment, a person at a switch must choose whether to pull it to save 5 people and kill 1.
Trolley problem.
That's 20 points. 15. In this region, Daniel Messerschmitt discovered the first fossils of a creature known locally as the Maimonto. Traders used a road usually named for this region to bring tea to the Ibrid Fair. The conquest of this region was aided by a victory over Kuchum Khan's forces at Koshlik by an army led by Yermak. The Yasak tax applied to the...
Like Siberia?
That's 20 points.
Nice.
And bonus for students in B. Scholars debate whether ordinary people in this civilization actually practiced its official religion, as no archaeological evidence for menorahs or similar symbols have been found. For 10 points each, identify the civilization whose leaders, the Beg and Kagun, practiced Judaism. Answer.
Hittites.
Bounce.
Judea.
Khazars. The Khazars made examples of these objects called Moses' dirhams that proclaimed Moses is the messenger of God. Peter the Great instituted the first decimal-based system for these units of exchange.
Coins.
Yeah. Khazar envoys tried to convert this monarch to Judaism, but he went with Eastern Orthodoxy instead. This Prince of Novgorod and Grand Prince of Kiev, who died in 1015, is known as the Great.
Peter.
Bounce.
Vladimir the Great.
That's 10 and 10. Toss of 16. This character is accused of a crime after a description of a power that crosses the White Sea, which inspired lectures by Martin Heidegger. This is the younger of 2 characters who are interrupted by an unnamed stranger in a sacred grove. A play title for this character features the line, "Wonders are many, and none is more wonderful than man." Guards see this character pouring wine on the ground after the end of a dust storm. This character's suicide in a cave prompts the suicide of her lover, Hema. That's
Cersei.
time. No, this woman, who has a guide for her father in a play set in Colonus, is sentenced to death by Creon after trying to bury the body of her brother Polynices for 10 points. What daughter of Oedipus named Sophocles dead? Yes, that's 10 points. And bonus for RMA. This character sings about stars that are drawing up the clouds of human grief in the aria Now the Great Bear and Pleiades for 10 points each. Name this maligned fisherman from a 1945 opera from which 4 sea interludes are often excerpted.
Peter Grimes.
Yes. Peter Grimes is an opera by this composer of The Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra.
Britain.
Yes. The closing mad scene of Peter Grimes features an ominous solo for this instrument that signals the death of the apprentice John. Ralph Vaughan Williams wrote an F minor concerto for this instrument.
Tuba.
That's 30 points. 17. Cucumbers are often added to this food for a cozy meal consumed on Fridays in Sweden. The so-called Lyon or French version of this food is always pluralized and may have been invented by the Moroccan Mubarak family. A franchise name for this food previously used the Mission Revival architecture and adapted a novel preparation of it from the Mythology Cafe. The Rubio's chain popularized adding seafood to this food. In 2019, LeBron James was denied a trademark for consuming this food on Tuesdays. Roy?
Tacos.
10 points. And bonus for James and B. Worldwide, at least 19,000 of these structures are still operating beyond their 50-year lifespans for 10 points each. Name these structures, one of which in Mosul was dangerously seized by ISIS in 2014. The retained sediment approach is one way to deliberately remove these structures.
Yeah, landmines.
No, not. These are dams. Heavy rain caused the Kandisha Dam in this country to fail in 2021. One of China's earliest investments in Africa was a railway that ends in Kapiri Mposhi in this landlocked country's copper belt. Answer.
Lesotho.
Pass.
Zambia.
Yes. In 2020, the UN granted this country a $250 million loan to improve dam safety. At least 25,000 people were killed in 1979 when a dam failed in this extremely populous country state of Gujarat.
India.
India.
That's 10 and 10. 18. One holder of this title angered critics by extending the Vienna Convention to all U.S. contractors, making them immune from local prosecution. A holder of this title was praised by a U.S. president for ruling over an island of stability in shark-infested waters. A holder of this title established a literacy corps as part of a series of secular reforms.
Prime Minister of the UK.
No. As part of a series of secular reforms termed the White Revolution, Jimmy Carter allowed the last holder of this title to seek refuge in from
Iran.
10 minutes. And bonus. A carol by this poet notes of our God that heaven cannot hold him, nor earth sustain, for 10 points each. Name is Victorian poet, who wrote about Laura trading a lock of her hair for some orchard fruits in Goblin Market. Yes. Rossetti described a time when frosty wind made moan and earth stood hard as iron in this poem, which was set to music by Gustav Holst in a popular British Christmas carol.
Our country.
Answer.
Our country 'tis of thee.
Facts.
What is it? What? No. Yeah.
It is in the bleak midwinter. Rossetti and her brother Dante both contributed to The Germ, a short-lived periodical created by this artistic and literary movement. As its name suggests, members of this group tried to use an aesthetic that predates the Italian Renaissance artists of the School of Athens.
Oh, this is our one.
That's 20 points. 19. This color is the background of the Met's portrait of Madame Junot. A pipe and some tobacco leaves rest on a simple object of this color in an 1888 still life, often held to be a self-portrait. Along with brown, this color dominates the bottom half of a landscape, with crows usually considered the artist.
Green?
No.
Yellow.
20 points. And your bonus. The breakdown of the system coincides with a reversal of the prevailing westerlies and an abrupt warming of the stratosphere for 10 points each. Name this large circulating system which lies beyond the mid-latitudes. Large rocky waves can cause this region to drift towards the equator, causing extreme weather. Answer.
Tropic of Capricorn.
Pass.
Polar vortex. Polar vortex.
Yes. The polar vortex is confined by these fast-flowing atmospheric currents known for their impact on airline travel.
Jet streams.
Yes. The ozone hole lies over Antarctica because these compounds are concentrated in the southern polar vortex. Polar stratospheric clouds provide ideal reaction sites for these halogenated compounds to destroy ozone.
CFCs.
That's 20 and 10. And this is the last toss-up. These two quantities are obtained by multiplying elements of a tensor written capital F by -1/2 of the Levi-Civita tensor, or by the speed of light, respectively. These quantities are calculated by accounting for propagation delay in Yafimenko's equations. In macroscopic materials, these two quantities are replaced by similar ones denoted D and H. Up to a constant, energy flux is represented by the cross product of these quantities in the Poynting vector. The curl of one of these quantities.
Electric and magnetic field.
That's 10 points.
Nice.
And bonus for students in B. In 1998, voters in the state approved Proposition 227, cutting funding for bilingual education programs for 10 points each in the state, whose representative Nancy Pelosi has supported grants that funded predominantly African American and Hispanic colleges.
California.
Yes. The 14th Amendment was used to strike down a law that banned teaching this language in the case of Meyer v. Nebraska. The first Speaker of the House, Frederick Muhlenberg, supposedly kept this language from becoming an official language of the U.S.
German?
Yes. Methods in this state's Little School of the 400 were applied nationwide following the passage of the Bilingual Education Act. A president and a former teacher from the state signed the Elementary and Secondary Education Act.
Virginia.
Illinois.
Answer.
Virginia.
Bounce.
Massachusetts, right?
Sure. Massachusetts.
It's LBJ, so it was Texas. So that's 20 points. And the end of the game.
All right, final score, Stevenson B 270, Richard Montgomery A 400.
Good game, both teams.
Good game. Good job. Good game. Good game.
That's 10 points. And your bonus. Conservator Michael
There's a word for it.
the word is Hijra. Another trip recounted in Malid, Texas.
No, we're gonna 3-2.
What happens after that?
Yeah, so what happens is we'll ask you to confirm your records with these record confirmation cards, and further instruction we'll give to you at the end of the round. Please just hang around. We have to dismiss you to lunch because there may be tiebreakers involved, and we would like to communicate that to you before you head out. We can't locate you.
Hunter A is 4-0.
Oh, it's us.
Is this last round or is this?
Alright, is everyone more or less ready to get started?
Also, good with being streamed?
Yes.
Good with being streamed? Yep.
Does the lighting make us look good?
I want to see myself.
Alright, so this is round 5 of the
And to me as well.
2022 PACE NSC. My name is Mike Bentley. I'm the editor of the sets. This particular round is sponsored by Scope. And I think that we are ready to go. Is that right?
Wait, Scope, the mouthwash company?
SCOP, the
Scott Novice.
As in the producer's scope office.
Okay. Wait, it's pronounced scoop?
It is pronounced scope.
We pronounce it
We've always called
Scott.
it Scott.
We've
Yeah,
Hunter
it's
College High School's been
Scott.
calling it Scott
It's cool.
Novice for the past like 10 years.
Let the
We
live
have an
stream
official pronunciation
show.
guide here as in
Scott
addressing
Novice.
each question. So, alright, so we have Stevenson B and Hunter B. Is everyone ready to go? Alright, toss of one.
Wait.
Nope.
Now we're ready to go.
Okay. Toss of one. This character leads a prince away from his hunting expedition to tell him that his father had been pushed down a well 3 years prior. This character sets all the horses free after learning the low status of his position as keeper of the heavenly horses. This character writes the great sage equal to
Like, simple.
power.
Nice.
Bonus. This term was coined by law professor William Baud in 2015 for 10 points each. He used this term for a range of orders and summary decisions that defied the Supreme Court's normal procedural regularity. Opinions described by this term are often released without a majority opinion and tend to be emergency orders.
It's like it's not the minority, it's the one that's like the opposition one.
Just the opposite.
Answer?
The dissent direct.
Over here.
Habeas corpus.
This is the shadow docket. A shadow docket ruling kept in place the remain in this country policy for asylum seekers. This country's president is Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador.
Obrador, president? Mexico.
David Cole, a leader of this organization, has criticized the rise of the shadow docket. A former director of this organization, Ira Glasser, argues that it would not have filed the Skokie free speech case today.
The ACLU, direct.
20 points.
Nice.
Toss of two. A popular illustrated children's book from this country includes a story about a scissor man who punishes a boy for thumb sucking. A folk
Germany.
power.
Nice.
Bonus. Craig Venter began Solera Corporation because he thought this project was too slow. For 10 points each, his government project, first headed by James Watson, that published its rough draft in June 2000. It aimed to sequence over 3 billion base pairs.
Human Genome Project.
Yeah.
Human Genome Project.
The first significant part of the human genome to be sequenced was this non-nuclear genetic material that codes for 37 genes.
37.
Answer?
Mitochondrial DNA.
Cytochrome C oxidase, a gene encoded by mtDNA, is one of the most commonly used genes in this technique that compares short regions of DNA to a library of specimens to determine the species of a certain specimen.
It's like the gel
Yes, you might be.
gel electrophoresis.
Over here.
I bet Alexa would know that.
Okay.
DNA barcoding, 20 points. Toss up 4. A celebrated general in this battle who surrendered his sword to Francis Marion Walker was named Benjamin Prentiss. After severe losses during this battle's first day, one general declared, "Lick 'em tomorrow, though." Prior to this battle, Union forces camped between Lick Creek and Owl Creek did not fortify their positions on the assumption that Confederates would not attack after losing Fort Donelson. Reinforcements under Don Carlos Buell helped stop an assault by PGT Beauregard in this battle, thus turning the tide for the Union. Union forces at this battle had time to regroup thanks to a prolonged defense of the Hornet's Nest. It represented his first big bloodbath of the Civil War, an 1862 battle fought in Tennessee. What? Yes, Shiloh is correct. Bonus. This author's Kennebunkport estate was financed by the success of his stories about the rapscallion Penrod. For 10 points each, another is two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, who wrote Alice Adams and the Magnificent Ambersons.
Any idea? Only guy I can think of is Whitman, but it's not Whitman. Whitman.
Come here.
Sure. Smith.
This is Booth Tarkington. The first Penrod novel opens by describing Duke, one of these creatures. One of these animals, named Buck, is the central character of Jack London's The Call of the Wild.
Wolf.
Wolf or dog?
Wolf, direct.
Over here.
Dog.
Yes. In one Penrod story, Penrod ruins a play by accidentally revealing his overalls while playing this character. This non-royal character kills Gaheris and Gareth while rescuing his forbidden lover in T.H. White's The Once and Future King.
What's Future King, this dude? Any idea?
No.
Okay, George, direct.
Over here.
Lancelot.
Yeah, 20 on the steal. Toss of 4. In special relativity, this statement contains a transverse and a longitudinal term, respectively, proportional to gamma and gamma cubed. This statement's quantum mechanical analog is usually the second equation.
Doppler effect?
No. Usually the second equation in the statement of Ehrenfest's theorem. The statement gains a term proportional to the rate of change of angular velocity named for Euler in a rotating frame. The statement gains a term equal to exhaust velocity times the mass loss rate in the derivation of the Rocket equation. Integrating the statement gives the definition of impulse. This law can be applied by using a free body diagram and finding a vector sum of forces. And when I say this law, often given as force equals the mass times acceleration.
Newton's second law.
That's right, for 10 points and your bonus. And so lying about jazz artists using anadromes or words spelled backwards to title their composition for 10 points each. This trumpeter reversed the last name of one of his friends to title one of his tracks Nardis, but is better known for his album Kind of Blue.
Kind of Blue Davis,
Yeah.
Miles Davis.
This brief member of the first Miles Davis quintet wrote Aragon, which is Nigeria reversed. He is known for the standard St. Thomas, which he adopted from a Bahamian folk song that his mother sang to him.
Oh,
Answer?
Coltrane.
Over here.
Armstrong.
Sonny Rollins. The first recording of Aragon included Horace Silver, who named a track Ekaro by reversing his first name. Silver played this instrument, also played by Davis sideman Herbie Hancock.
Herbie Hancock.
Piano, right?
Piano,
Yeah.
right.
20 points on the bonus.
Thank you, Batson.
Okay. Toss up.
Wait.
21 pleasures of this task are.
It's done.
21 pleasures of this task are outlined in Lydia Davis's essays too. The blue score was developed to assess the quality of this task. IBM researchers working on this task capitalized on the Hansard dataset, a byproduct of a 1969 Canadian law. In 2016, Deborah Smith won an international award for this task alongside Anne Kang. David Foster Wallace attacked the Victorian sensibilities of Constance Garnett's approach to this task. A 1959 Roman Jacobson essay describes how circumlocutions might be used when meanings differ in this task. A website automating this task took its name from Douglas Adams' Babelfish. False friends often lead to errors in this task. When I say this task,
Translation.
that's right. Bonus. This term once referred to a pair of unbuckled shoes, but subsequently referred to women who bobbed their hair. For 10 points each, note about this term for women in the 1920s who flaunted traditional gender roles by wearing arm-exposing dresses and smoking in public.
Flappers, dress.
Yes. Gertrude Erdoğan inspired many flappers to take up this activity. The U.S. sent a women's team in this activity to the 1920 Olympics, despite it being widely seen as obscene for women to partake in it just 8 years earlier.
Sure. Wrestling?
Over here.
I think it's that, yeah. What?
Swimming?
They say
Swimming.
Yes. By 1927, only 70 of 1,300 working girls in Milwaukee still wore these things due to the flapper resistance to them. Whalebone was frequently used for these stays and these things.
Corsets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Correct.
Yep, 20 and 10. Plus 6. A prophecy by this man titles a Joseph Horowitz book that examines the relative obscurity of composers such as Florence Price. The Allegro con fuoco final movement of a symphony by this composer introduces a brass motif consisting of the
Like Dvorak?
power.
That's so stupid.
Bonus. In this novel, Rebecca suffers the first case of insomnia that later plagued the whole town. For 10 points each. In this novel, in which one character foments 32 separate civil wars and fathers 17 illegitimate children.
Things fall apart.
Answer?
Things fall apart.
Over here.
It's one that's like
100 Years Solitude.
100 Years Solitude.
Yes. Is a magical realism novel that is Colombian author who created its setting of Macondo in his novella Leaf Storm.
Garcia Marquez.
Yes. In 100 Years of Solitude, Remedios the Beauty ascends into heaven while doing this action. Remedios' sister-in-law, Ferranda, remains upset that Remedios left with the white object she was doing this action on. Answer?
Blowing a horn.
Over here.
Praying. I have no idea.
Praying or nursing or praying direct.
This is folding sheets, so 10 and 10.
Sorry, which parts?
The first one was a steal, and the second one was a gift.
Okay, next.
2007. Linda Coley's global history of these things begins with a biography of Pasquale Paoli and argues that their proliferation in the 19th century was due to the expense of naval warfare. A Broadway play by Heidi Schreck centered on what one of these things means to me.
The Constitution?
Nice.
Bonus. A book on this concept was held out by Cowboys coach Jimmy Johnson after winning Super Bowl 27. For 10 points each, name this concept that titles a book about the psychology of optimal experience written by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Success? Success, direct.
Over here. How does this flow? Csikszentmihalyi examined the flow concepts inherent in Montessori types of these institutions, which often mix together children of different ages.
Schools.
Yes. In the 1980s, Csikszentmihalyi Heidi used these then cutting-edge communication devices to get real-time feedback on the flow state of subjects. Because these devices usually work in cell-coverage dead zones, they're still widely used by doctors.
Pagers, direct.
Yes, point.
Okay, we need to do an additional timeout. Can you mute the stream at OBS quickly? Just quickly, please mute that.
Okay, so that's, so we are on toss-up 8. A layer of nanophase iron originating from these events may resolve the S-type conundrum by producing a gradual reddening. The surface chemistry of regolith is shaped by embedding of protons and these events, which agglutinate particles together into a glassy mass.
Like an asteroid impact?
I think.
No. Tectonically, inactive objects can be dated using the distribution of these events, which are the most energetic component of space weathering. The smooth surface of Mare Imbrium stems from volcanism triggered by these events, which are used to separate the periods of lunar geology. The Calorus Basin of Mercury was created by a large example for 10 points. What events that produce craters on the moon?
Meteor impacts.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Protest.
Okay, noted.
So it's still in power.
Yeah, we can deal with this at half, but yeah. And also unmuted on OBS.
Yes. Good. Bonus 10.8. Identify the following about Adrian Meyer's head-scratching interpretation of Greek mythology. In the book Gods and Robots, Meyer characterizes this figure as a seductive fembot who released a jar's swarm of evils to torment mortals forever.
Pandora, direct.
Meyer argues that dinosaur fossils were the basis for the mythological griffins who lived between Aram Aspians in this region. Every year, Apollo flew a swan to this on a swan to this region, whose residents lived for 1,000 years.
Any idea? Region. Crete.
Over
The sun.
That's Hyperborea. Meyer cites a dilemma named for this character amongst scientists working on age-prolonging medicines. This son of Laomedon is granted eternal life, but not eternal youth by Zeus.
Eternal life, not eternal youth. Okay. Antioch, direct.
Over here.
Theseus.
Tithonus, 10 points for the bonus. Plus 9. Fred Boissonnes's photos of this building illustrate the section about it as a machine for storing emotion in Le Corbusier's towards a new architecture. Lawrence Alma Tadema imagined an artist showing his friends a relief sculpture of this building. The Duveen Gallery houses 16 metopes from this building. In 1687, this building was badly damaged after shelling by Francesco Morosoni of Venice. A battle between the centaurs and the Lapiths was sculpted by Phidias for this building and is now the British Museum thanks to Lord Elgin. The naos of this temple originally housed a large chryselephantine sculpture of a goddess of wisdom. Now, when I say this temple... Yes, so this is Parthenon. Bonus. By the time he composed his fourth symphony, Gustav Mahler had rejected these documents in favor of being a pure musician. 10 points each came these documents that provide descriptions of the themes evoked in the symphony. Today, listeners at the symphony may receive these documents to read about the history of the performance's repertoire.
Program? Yeah, program?
In contrast to Mahler, this earlier French composer provided program notes for each movement in his 1830-piece Symphonie Fantastique.
Schubert, list.
Answer?
List.
Over here?
I know it barely is.
Yes. The program notes for this second movement of Symphonie Fantastique describes how the artist finds himself in the most diverse situations in life. The idea fixe twice interrupts the central waltz of this movement, which originally included an often omitted solo cornet part.
Second movement?
No, over here.
March to the scaffold.
This is a ball, so it's
Wait,
10 and
isn't
10.
it?
March to the scaffold is like 4.
It's another.
Is it 4?
I think.
It's
Yeah.
really late, I think.
But then you think, okay,
Yeah,
whatever.
ball's second.
Top 10. In the story of this author, a German showman refuses to cut out Ivan after he is eaten alive by a crocodile. The dreamer protagonist in the story of this author falls for Nastenka over 4 winter evenings. One of this author's protagonists spends months preparing to literally bump into a tall military officer who insulted him. In a novella by this author of White Nights, the protagonist criticizes the
Pushkin?
No. Criticizes the Crystal Palace of Nikolai Chernyshevsky prior to the section apropos of the wet snow. The protagonist of that novella by this author claims to be a sick and spiteful man and demeans the prostitute Liza. Notes from the Underground is by for 10 points what author who created Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment.
Dostoevsky.
Yes, 10 points. Bonus. In a de-insertion reaction that forms the product of the Heck reaction, a hydride at this position relative to an alkyl group is transferred to an open site on a metal. For 10 points each in this position, the second carbon away from a functional group.
Second time.
Carbon away from
Meta trend.
Over here.
Beta?
Yes. The product of the alkyl reaction often eliminates at the beta carbon to form this type of bond between the alpha and beta carbons. This type of bond consists of 1 pi and 1 sigma bond.
Double. Trend.
Yes. The formation of the alpha-beta unsaturated carbonyl and alkyl reactions occurs through one of these reactions via the E1CB mechanism. In this type of reaction, 2 leading groups are removed from a molecule.
Elimination, I don't know.
Elimination trend.
Yes, 20 and 10.
Nice.
That's half.
Yep. At the half, you have a score of 130 points for Stevenson D and 210 points for Hunter D.
I have 224.
220. Okay, what do you have after toss of 5?
I think
Um,
science is still there.
At the end of cycle 5, yes.
Yeah, I haven't really been keeping track of
It's okay.
toss-ups.
We can track through every single top. Like, what's the last thing you have tracked for?
I have
It does kind of matter. Okay, I'll
them getting
20
20 points on the bonus and us getting 10.
At toss of 5 or the most recent?
No, at the most recent one.
Most recent? Okay, so I have 20 and 10 on the bounce effect. And then before that, I had 10 and 10. Before that, I had 10 for Hunter.
Yeah.
On toss of 8. At 7, I have 20 and nothing for. Okay, so 20 for Hunter.
Yeah.
And then before that, I have 10 and 10 for. Yeah, 10 and 10 on toss of 6.
Yeah.
And then 5, 10 and 10. 4, 20 for Hunter. 3, 20 for Stevenson.
Yeah.
You got 10 on bonus 3?
Yeah, for Hunter.
For Hunter on bonus 3, let's take a look. Bonus 3.
This is toss up 1.
I got that they. I'm sorry. You have 10 for Hunter on that.
Yeah.
Oh, they got. Did they get the last part? Okay.
What bonus there?
I believe Stevenson got.
That's not bonus 3.
No, wait.
Did they get-
Sorry, 1 second. This is horribly organized.
No worries.
So after the first toss up, what was the score?
Okay, after the first toss-up, I have 40 nothing for Hunter.
40
then
nothing.
40-40.
Yeah.
Then I have 60-50.
Yeah.
Then 90-50.
We have 80.
You have 80. So on bonus 4.
A's all good.
They got David. Did they get Davis? They got Davis.
They got Davis and piano.
They got Davis and piano, first and last, which is what I have.
This is a 20.
Oh, so that's a 20. Okay.
The
Yeah.
toss-up.
And I want to make sure on bonus 3, I have last 2 for 20.
What was the
yeah,
top
those last 2 were stolen for 20.
Oh, last 2 were stolen for 20 by Hunter.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that should be 230, 110.
110? No, I have. Alright. Then I have 230, 130 for us.
230, 130.
Okay.
I can
I'm
do
taking score now.
Sure. Okay. So we'll start at the very beginning again. I have after toss 140 nothing for Hunter.
40
then,
nothing.
Then 40-40.
Yeah.
Then 70-40. We got the last 2 for that bonus for 30 on the cycle.
We have 60-50.
You have 60-50. Did you steal anything on that bonus part?
Did you take score?
Yeah, we stole.
Alright.
Did you steal Doug?
We stole the.
20.
That's what Trigger had.
Or.
So, do you have,
So it could be, I thought that they had stolen Dog. Or wait, who's in control of this one? I thought it was Hunter. I thought they stole Dog for 10.
Yeah, we stole Dog.
They stole Dog
They
for 10?
stole
We
Dog.
stole Dog.
Yeah, we stole Dog.
They have 2 steals on those.
They have 2 steals on bonus 3.
Yes.
So first 2 stolen?
Yeah.
No.
Or
No,
was the last 2 stolen?
Dog.
Last 2 stolen.
No,
The last one.
Yeah, 2 stolen, first and last.
And Hunter got nothing on
Oh,
that?
this could be a toss-up.
Correct.
Yeah, and then 100 and
Okay,
And then
130,
210.
210.
So 60-50?
Yeah, 60.
So then 60-50, then 60-80,
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
70-100,
yes.
then
Wait, we have 70-80 for this.
We have 70-80 because we got a bonus
70.
bounce back.
On
After
plus 5?
60-50, yeah.
Yeah, after 60-50, it's
We have
70-80.
Okay.
We got a bonus, and then we have 100.
So that was flappers, swimming, and corsets.
Yo.
Yeah, we
So
got swimming.
We got swimming.
We got swimming.
We got swimming, that's what I have.
We
So
have
it's
the other
100
two.
to 110.
Sorry, wait, 1 second.
No, 100 to 110 after a while.
So you got, wait, so you got swimming.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
Hunter got
up
the
to
other
70.
20.
Did Hunter get corsets?
Yeah,
Yes.
they did.
Okay, so 20 in. Okay, my apologies. So I have 220, 130.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
what
Yes,
we
that's
had.
what
Yes,
we
yes,
had.
okay.
Okay.
My apologies for that.
Yep.
I was dealing with something on my end that, for those cycles, I was like
Why is there more?
focusing on that instead of this,
How many-
so
No
I
worries.
made sure to my apologies for
I
that.
believe there have been 2.
Oh,
Isn't that one?
Constitution and then
Okay.
Antigua.
Wait,
So
sorry,
halftime
three-
score is 220, 130.
Sure.
220, 130?
I needed lots of books, it's important, yeah. So what are the directions for that on the score sheet? Because I see that there's like a tick mark in
Take
front of
your
us,
iPad.
but, do I just explain it in the sheet?
Yeah, I believe so, and we want those to be
Anonymously, just like, team claim, and I wanna make sure that I launch your protest, but your protest on the impact toss-up, you said that asteroid impact should be
Yeah.
accepted?
Yes.
Outright, rather than prompted or something else.
I mean, prompt.
It should've been
It should be either promptable or acceptable.
You need to choose one.
Oh.
Oh, say promptable then.
Promptable, yeah.
Okay, claim that asteroid impact should be promptable. Okay. Then that is recorded, with the protest recorded and the score recorded, are both things agreed to continue.
We want to say, okay.
Now we can compute this way. So for the record, your buzz would have been in power.
We'll just read a new one.
Okay, so Steven said your buzz would have been in power, so that would be 20 points. Hunter got 10, and then this is impact, correct? So this is toss up 8. And on that bonus, Pandora, Hyperborea, and Tithonus, they got 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't actually know how to compute the swing properly, so.
So I think that's a swing of
So
60.
20,
20, 10, and
7.
30.
Yeah, because
Because
there's a
we
12.
They got
we-
10,
we
and then
got-
they got 10 on the bonus.
We could have gotten 30.
We
so
could have gotten
50.
30.
You could have gotten
We could've
30.
50. but
So
we got
70?
So it's 70.
20 plus 20 plus 30?
Yeah. 70 points.
Correct.
Okay, so 70 points swing.
Oh yeah, please plus 10 to the top.
We can do this.
Alright.
Plus 70.
Sorry, there was something we were supposed to do special for us.
Yeah. No, we should, yeah, are we good?
Alright, hopefully.
I can ask, Harry about that specifically, yeah.
Alright, is everyone ready to start second half here?
Yes, have you noted the substitution?
Oh no, substitution is important, thank you.
Yes,
Maggie is out,
Fabian
and
is
I'm
in for Maggie.
Thank you, let me know that very quickly.
And for us, Marius instead is in for Hari.
Sorry, 1 second. Thank you for telling me about that, I was not have noted that. And then for Stevenson, what is your substitution?
Moria for Hari.
Moria for Hari.
Got your own name.
No, I was gonna say like Hari for Moria.
My apologies for that. Okay, I'm good to go.
Alright, Tell 11. The station's flag carrier airline reduced operations after the closure of the zinc mine at Memorialik in the late 1980s and still operates subsidized settlement flights to rural areas. The station's premier works from a penthouse office built above its first ever shopping mall. This nation's K&I conglomerate emerged from a colonial monopoly that established the port of Butuan on Disco Island. The Queen Elizabeth Islands lie to this nation's northwest, where the U.S. operates full air base. This nation's northernmost year-round port, Sizimit, is second. Yes, 10. Bonus. During this emperor's early reign, the Buddhist fanatic Nishio Inoue attempted to assassinate several government officials during the League of Blood incident. 10 points each. Name this Japanese emperor during World War II.
Hirohito, right? Hirohito, correct?
Yeah, one of those killed in the League of Blood incident was Dan Takuma, a leader of one of these Japanese conglomerates that grew significantly during the Meiji period. They included Mitsubishi and Yasuda.
Defer.
Yes. This man was inspired by the League of Blood incident to lead the Shield Society in a 1970 coup against the Japanese government. After the coup's failure, this man committed seppuku.
Defer.
Yeah.
30 points. Toss of 12. One of these texts repeatedly declares, "I am the food," after explaining the 5 sheets of food, breath, mind, understanding, and bliss. The method of neither this nor that or neti was introduced in these texts, which typically end by proclaiming peace, peace, peace. In one of these texts, the father uses salt dissolved in water to teach his son that thou art that, or tastavan asi. The power. Bonus. Between 1945 and 1970, the number of college majors in this field quadrupled. For 10 points each, in this field popularized among lay readers by Fritjof Capra's bestseller On the Tao of It. The pragmatic nature of this discipline in post-war classrooms led to the motto, shut up and calculate.
Like on the tile of mathematics?
Like
Or statistics?
Answer?
Statistics.
Over here.
Computer program.
Yeah.
Computer programming.
Physics. The post-war American scientist was typified by a man named for this national laboratory that developed Thin Man in the 1940s.
Thin Man,
Los Alamos?
Los Alamos, correct?
In a 2011 book by David Kaiser argues that these titled people saved physics in the 1970s. These long-haired youths popularized slogans like "Make Love, Not War," and stereotypically drove around in VW buses with signs painted on them.
Like the hippies?
20 points.
And very quickly, did the power agreement? Or was that just?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that was 10
Oh,
points.
10, okay, good.
2013. In 2021, a king of these people with the first name Goodwill appointed one of his wives as his successor, but she died a month after he did. A 20th century leader of these people signed the Malabatini Declaration of Faith with Harry Schwartz and founded a freedom party named after their word for crown. After most of their land was seized in power.
Nice.
Bonus. This author attacked playgoers in an ode to himself following the commercial failure of his play The New Inn. For 10 points each, this playwright, whose earlier successes included Volpone and The Alchemist.
The Alchemist writer. I'll go Voltaire, direct.
Answer?
Voltaire.
Over here.
More maybe?
Ben Jonson. At his death, Johnson was working on a play about sad people in his profession. Walter Raleigh wrote a nymph's reply to one of these people in response to a poem by Christopher Marlowe.
Marlowe, I don't know, the nymph's response like a nurse or like a doctor or something. Doctor, direct.
Over here.
Writer maybe?
Writer.
As a shepherd. After his death, Johnson's influence was maintained among so-called sons of Ben, which included this cavalier poet of Ballad Upon a Wedding. The lyric from this man's place, Ag Laura, asks, "Why so pale and wan, fond lover?"
Okay, it's not Marlowe. How about Thomas Kidd, direct?
Over here.
Maybe
Wordsworth?
This is Sir John Suckling. No points there. Toss 14. A condition which occurs due to excess amounts of this compound must be differentiated from neuroleptic malignant syndrome. The constipation drug prucalopride targets this molecule's class 4 receptors. This compound's receptors in the chemoreceptor trigger zone are blocked by antiemetics like ondansetron. This vasoconstricting compound is secreted from the dense bodies of platelets along with ADP and calcium. Nearly 80% of the body's supply of this neurotransmitter is found in enterochromaffin cells in the enteric nervous system. This monoamine is produced by the sequential hydroxylation and decarboxylation of tryptophan. SSRIs inhibit the degree.
Serotonin.
10 points. Bonus. One form of the Hebrew term harem is often equated to this Christian practice. For 10 points each, in this practice that in Catholicism bans someone from receiving the Eucharist or taking part in the liturgy. It should not be confused with the papal interdict.
Excommunication.
Vina Gallon declared that some sects of this movement, popular in Poland, were harem in the late 18th century. This movement, named for the word meaning pious, was founded by Baal Shem Tov. Answer?
Pious movement.
Over here.
An idea. Differ.
Yes. Jews subject to a lesser form of harem called nidui cannot be counted for the minyan, a quorum of this many men needed for a public prayer.
8?
Over here.
Is this 9? 5? 5.
It's 10. So 10 and 10. Toss of 15. The first film adaptation display opens with one character eating a chicken leg and another doing a crossword. A character in this play declares we must carry on as though we did not know the difference between truth or illusion, and describes himself as an amphibid. Mike Nichols directed a film adaptation of this play, which originally opens by quoting Beyond the Forests, "What a dump." A character in this play fires a gag umbrella at Gunn and his wife. This play, which contains a Walpurgis knock, ends after one character decides to kill his fictional son. History professor George and his wife Martha host a dinner party.
Who's afraid of Virginia Woolf?
10 points. Bonus. The RCA researcher Herb Marsuga claimed that his prior discovery was snubbed after the 2014 Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded for the discovery of one color of these devices for 10 points each. Name this type of diode used for illumination.
LED.
LED, direct.
Akasaki, Amano, and Nakamura won the 2014 Nobel for inventing LEDs of this color based on magnesium doping. A U.S. case found that they had infringed on a patent for LEDs of this color made by Theodore Mutakis.
Okay, I'm going green, direct.
Okay.
Was it blue? White? Blue.
White.
White.
Blue. Most designs for blue LEDs use the nitride of this metal. The first LEDs used a 3-5 semiconductor, including this metal, which is now prominently used in solar panels.
Oh.
No.
Silicon, direct.
Right here.
Gallium.
Gallium.
Yep. 10 and 10 bonus. Cost of 16. During the 1867 year of great weakness in this country, a famine sent immigrants such as future IWW member Joe Hill to the U.S. Two economists born in this country helped inspire the Million program of public housing after publishing Power.
Thanks.
Bonus. A series of paintings titled for these flowers are on display at the Musée de l'Orangerie. For example, each of these flowers, a frequent subject of late works by Claude Monet. Monet painted numerous images of these flowers floating at Giverny, including some under a Japanese bridge.
Watermelon, direct.
Monet paid a lumber merchant to save some of these other plants so he could finish painting them along the Thames River in gray weather and in the sun.
I don't know, like, daisies, direct.
Over here.
Sunflowers?
Poplar trees. Monet made over 70 paintings of two separate bridges in the city, including a painting subtitled Through Fog in 1903. Monet also repeatedly painted a government building in this city from St. Thomas's Hospital.
Is it London? It's not. It's not London, direct.
What?
London?
Yep, 20 points. Cost of 17. A poem by this author describes how the narrator stood dumb when your betraying sisters called and tar wept by the railings. The lines out here in Jutland, in the old man killing parishes, I will feel lost, unhappy and at home, was based on this author's reading of P.D. Globe's book, The Bog People. This author described how the summer's blood of the title fruit of another poem causes palms to be as sticky as bluebeards. This poet of blackberry picking described Big Jim Evans saying it was a hard blow, a poem in which the speaker's brother is placed in a 4-foot box, a foot for every year. There was this Irish poet whose collection Death of a Naturalist included Midterm Break and Digging.
William Carlos Williams.
No penalty.
Joyce?
This is Seamus Heaney. Clause of 18. Smith College owns this artist's colonial revivalist painting of a woman at a spinning wheel called In Grandmother's Time. This artist carved notes from a Mendelssohn passage into the frame of this portrait of soprano Wada Cook. In a non-commissioned portrait by this artist relegated to Ward 1 at the Centennial Exposition, the only woman in the painting cringes in horror to the left of the title figure, a professor at Jefferson. In another painting by this artist, a nude model poses for sculptor William Rush. An assistant holds a chloroform doused cloth as students in an amphitheater take notes in a painting by this artist titled for a Philadelphia surgeon. It represents him as American realist painter of the Gross Clinic.
What's his name?
This time.
Adams?
Thomas Eakins. 2019. Weeping and crizzling are forms of corrosion that can occur to this material due to improper levels of moisture and alkali. Austin Engel developed the concept of strong and fragile precursors to this material. Network-forming cations and stabilizers form the bulk of this material, which forms to a second-order phase transition involving the supercooling of a viscous fluid. Sodium carbonate serves as a flux to lower the transition temperature required to form a type of this substance, to which lime is added for durability. The substance is given a low coefficient of thermal expansion through the addition of boron trioxide. Silica is melted to form, for 10 points, what amorphous solid?
Glass.
Yes.
Oh.
Bonus. One event at the ancient Greek Olympics was a race where men wore the armor and carried the shields used by these soldiers. 10 points each. I think these Greek foot soldiers who carried a thrusting spear and fought in phalanxes.
Hoplites.
Yes. Another military-themed athletic event popular amongst the Greeks was races in these vehicles. Roman women and men were allowed to sit together in races of these vehicles.
Chariots.
Callimachus wrote an ode praising a queen of this name whose horses were victorious in the Nemean Games. That queen of this name, known as the Benefactress, gave a lock of her hair for her husband Ptolemy III's safe return from Syria.
Cleopatra.
Over here?
Ptolemy the Third wife.
Fairness?
Fairness, right.
Yes, 20 and 10. And last toss-up. In a book titled For this Thinker and Philosophy, Paul Ricoeur calls this thinker a master of suspicion. In Life Against Death, Norman O. Brown endorses the perspective that this thinker takes on religion in works like The Future of an Illusion. This thinker's writings on the memoirs of Judge Schreiber are critiqued in the first volume of Deleuze and Guattari's Capitalism and Schizophrenia. Herbert Repuse's book, Eros and Civilization, is a philosophical inquiry into this thinker, partly titled after the life drive Eros, which this thinker...
Freud.
Yes. 10 points. Bonus. After being pricked by a rose, this author wrote a 3-line epitaph for himself declaring roses to be pure contradiction. For 10 points each in this poet, who also referenced roses in a 64-poem collection inspired by Vera Canute, whose first poem opens, "There rose a tree, oh pure transcendence."
Any idea? William Carlos Williams.
Over here.
Emerson?
This is Rilke. Rilke declared, "Let the rose blossom each year" in the aforementioned collection, which consists of poems addressed to Orpheus in this 14-line format.
Road.
Sonnet.
Oh, sonnets.
Sonnet director.
Right.
Yes. Rilke's epitaph uses his common theme of eyes, as does this other poem by him that describes the title statue's eyes like ripening fruit. This poem ends with the line, "You must change your life."
Change your life. I don't know. David maybe? David direct.
Over here.
John.
This is the archaic torso of Apollo, so that's 10 points on the bonus, and that is the end of the game.
Alright. At the end of the game, we have a final score of 190 for Steven Senke and 420 for Hunter Means. Good game, both teams. Would you both please come to the front to fill out your record confirmation cards?